More Than My Ex-Fiancé, More Than Friends Sweet Romance Book 2 by Danae Little. Emma Allen wanted to run away. The man sitting across from her continued his monologue of the mating tactics of the harlequin beetle. He'd been at it all night. 3 hours of hearing about insects and their thoraxes. She squeezed her legs tightly under the chair to keep them from taking off in flight, though they shook as if in agony. Who cares what a spermathecal is? Well, she guessed an entomologist would, and that was exactly what her blind date was. He pushed his thick glasses up his nose and licked his lips. This bug talk must really excite him. A shiver coursed through her body. What was her friend thinking? This was the 6th blind date in the last 4 months. Each one of them only confirmed the fact that Emma had messed up a year ago. Royally messed up. Did you know that the harlequin beetle burrows its nest in the fungus of a tree? Her date asked her, and was actually waiting for a response. It had been at least 20 minutes since he had acknowledged her presence. No I didn't, Jonathan, but I have a big day too, Emma started. Yeah, it's the best place for them to camouflage, he continued on. Emma sighed and scanned the emptying restaurant. Sometimes she wished she could be a bit more assertive. This was torture. Excuse me, the waiter who wore a Santa hat interrupted, saving the night. The restaurant is now closed. Would you like any boxes? No thank you, Emma said in relief. The end was in sight. The waiter nodded, the ball at the end of his hat bobbing. He rolled his eyes towards her date, who fumbled with his napkin and adjusted his tie several times. She hadn't been the only one to notice her date's lack of attention. He gave her a smile full of pity, before taking off his apron and walking towards the back of the restaurant. So, Emma, Jonathan said as he rose, offering her his arm. I have had a pleasant time. Would you like to extend the evening by getting a drink? I know the perfect place just down the road. I realized I have been talking the entire time, and I would like to get to know more about you. You are a teacher, right? They passed through the restaurant door and into the chill of the night. Yes, I am. Unfortunately, I do not drink, and I have a stack of papers to grade before I turn in report cards. So I must be on my way. Thank you though for dinner and the enlightening conversation about harlequin beetles. I can't wait to share those facts with my class on Monday. Emma backed away, plastering on her most apologetic smile as she walked towards her car parked just a few yards away. Oh well, I would be happy to share more with you or even come into your class sometime. He took 2 steps towards her but stopped as she ducked behind her car and to the driver's door. Let's do a rain check? Sure. Give me a call. Thanks again. She slipped into the safety of her car, closing the door on his muffled response. Guilt filled her belly like a rock, but she didn't know how to tell him she wasn't interested. In fact, just the thought of confrontation sent her skin into goosebumps and her heart racing. An image of Luke flashed in her mind, his soft brown eyes and boyish grin. He had always encouraged her to speak up, and he could actually hold a 2-way conversation. Her heart ripped, just like it did every time she thought about him. What had she done? The drive home seemed to fly by while she occupied herself with memories of Luke. Christmas songs playing on the radio as well as the green and red lights blurring past her as she drove, only made her longing stronger. She missed him more than she would care to admit. The cold bit through her lightweight jacket as she raced up the steps to her apartment. Nothing like a Colorado winter, but the California Valley night air still held a touch of winter. The pine needle wreath jingled as she unlocked and opened the door. Her phone rang like whoever was on the other line knew as soon as she had stepped into her place. The screen showed an image of Sarah, a teacher that had befriended her as soon as she started working at the school a year ago, and the culprit of her tortuous night. Emma dropped her purse on the counter and released her cramped feet from her heels before hitting the green button. Hey Sarah, Emma sighed out as she plopped on the couch, wishing she had remembered to plug her Christmas tree in before she sat down. Nothing like watching the slow blink of Christmas lights to calm her. Well, don't sound too excited. Are you still on your date? Her friend asked with glee. Thank goodness no. Where do you find these guys? A flicker of frustration passed through her. She was done being set up. I mean, is this all that's left? Bug guys and monologists, and oh yeah, don't forget the taxidermist. Really? I didn't think people did that anymore. That good, huh? Sarah's enthusiasm died. You know it doesn't help that you compare them all to Luke the God. What? Emma scrunched up her nose. Luke was not perfect, but he sure had a lot over the men she had encountered this past year. Yeah. Why did you leave him anyway? I have never heard you say one negative thing about this supreme being of a guy. I had my reasons, and he's no god. Yet, the image that popped up in Emma's mind practically radiated light. Well, I think you better go get him back before he settles down with someone else, her friend said in a humph. Someone else. The thought tore through Emma like scalding hot fire. It pained her more than it should. She didn't have the right to feel that way. Can you fix whatever happened between the two of you? Sarah asked. I don't know, Emma breathed out. Her mind whirled. I left him 2 weeks before our wedding. You what? Sarah exclaimed so loud that Emma almost dropped the phone. Yeah, that's a pretty big oops to come back from. Emma threw her head back into the cushy couch and banged it a few times for good measure. She should have never left. It seemed so important to her a year ago. Something had squirmed within her, leaving her feet moving and her heart racing in fear. The next thing she knew, she had accepted a position in the California Valley, replacing a teacher going out on an extended maternity leave. Luke had called hundreds of times. Yet she couldn't bring herself to answer or open any of his texts. How had she convinced herself that was the right thing to do? She knew why. She knew exactly why. If she would have heard his smooth, deep voice, she would have run right back to him. Now she wished she had. Luke deserved to be happy. If he hadn't already moved on, then he probably had too much hate towards her for any reconciliation. Well, I guess you never know until you try, Sarah hinted before pushing forward. So, what are you doing for winter break? Emma could never get used to not saying Christmas break. It felt so odd to her. Breaking for such a wonderful holiday, her absolute favorite, made sense. Why would you break just for winter? Well, except skiing. She missed skiing. We always go to the mountain resort for Christmas. My parents are practically begging me to go, and I haven't seen them in too long. She could almost taste the snowflakes hitting her tongue and feel the whoosh-whoosh of the snow below her skis. You know what, I'm going to go. I could really use some fun. You're telling me? Wish I could go with you, her friend pouted. Yeah, right, Brian would never let you get out of his family's ugly sweater contest. Emma forced a tight laugh. I know. He really wants to win this year, and with the sweaters he picked out, we better. Something has to make it worthwhile to wear those hideous things. Sarah laughed good-naturedly. Well, I'm sorry your date was so lame, again. Enjoy working on your report cards tomorrow, unless you are better than me and have finished? You kidding? I'll be up past midnight these next 2 nights just to get them done in time. Yeah, me too probably. Her friend sighed. Oh well, the life of a teacher. Well, good luck, and hey, think about what I said about Luke. You need to either get him back or let his ideology go. Yeah. Emma let out a huge breath and her heart raced with just the thought. Best of luck on your report cards too. Hey, only 3 more days of school and we have more than 2 weeks off. Yay? Sarah cheered. See you Monday. Goodbye and thanks for the talk. Anytime, goodbye. Emma ended the call, dropping the phone to her stomach. Her heart pounded, echoing in her ears and causing her breath to come in short wisps. Could she really get enough nerve to call Luke? What would she say to him? What could she say? Oh, hey, yeah. Sorry I ran off 2 weeks before our wedding and ignored you for the last year. Do you want to try again? Emma sat up with a groan. She stared at her phone, scrolled her contacts, until his name sat there in front of her, taunting her, daring her. She didn't have enough backbone to do it. Not only was she afraid of rejection, what if she freaked like she did last time? She couldn't bear hurting him again. A single tear trailed down her cheek. She was doomed to loneliness or bug-loving men who had no idea how to make a girl feel special. Luke did, but she didn't deserve him after what she'd done. Her head hung down into her hands. Luke's name still stared up at her, and at the bottom of the screen her mom's name peeked out as if in saving grace. Without thought, she pressed the phone icon next her mom's number. Her mom picked up on the second ring. "Honey, you okay?" Her mom's voice sounded groggy. Immediately guilt sat heavy in Emma's stomach. "I'm sorry it's so late, Mom. I always forget about the time difference." "Well, even 10 is pretty late to call your mother." Sounds of her sheets moving traveled across the phone. "She's all right, dear, go back to sleep." "I woke Dad too." "I'm sorry. I'll call back tomorrow." Her throat constricted as she said the words. "It's okay, Emma. I'm in the other room now. Tell me what's going on." Her mom could always tell when Emma needed to talk, and she had the best advice, even if it hurt at times. They had their hard times during high school, but her senior year they reconnected. "Can I still come up to the resort for Christmas?" Emma did her best to keep the emotion from her voice, but it still trembled. "Of course, now tell me what this is really about." "I just need to have some fun." She sucked in her lips to keep the sobs from breaking free. Why was she crying? "Did your blind date go that bad, honey?" Empathy filled her mom's voice. "They all will." She choked out and then took in a deep, steadying breath. "You were right, Mom. I messed up big time, and I don't know if I can fix it." She let the tears flow freely. "Oh, honey. Are you talking about Luke?" Emma moaned out, unable to speak with emotions threatening to consume her. "Contrary to popular belief, I don't like to always be right." Her mom sighed. "I wish I could help you with this." Her mom gave her the space to control her emotions, just held the silence in support. Tears streamed down Emma's face. A few minutes and deep breaths later, her throat eased and a calmness settled over her. "You know, honey, it's not too late to ask for forgiveness," her mom coaxed. Emma nodded her head, then remembered she couldn't see her. "What if he doesn't want to talk with me?" "Well, you would have tried at least, and a little persistence never hurt anyone. Without your dad's resolve to see us together, it never would have happened." Emma smiled at the memory of their falling in love story she had been told throughout her childhood. Her mom had been a ski instructor at the resort she would be traveling to in a few days. Her father had been up on spring break with a bunch of buddies. His relentless pursuit, despite her mom's many rejections, paid off in the end. Once she had given her dad a chance, they had been inseparable. Emma treasured the love story as she grew up, hoping one day a similar thing would happen to her. When she met Luke, though, her falling in love story took a more direct route. No one rejected the other. It had practically been love at first sight. She had seen him across the campus, laughing with his friends when their eyes met. The rest of the world faded, and as if pulled by an invisible force, they walked to one another and the rest was history. That had been her first day of college. "Emma," her mom prompted. "You still there?" "Sorry, yeah, I'm here." "You know, the Adams will be at the resort too." Betsy said she was doing her best to get Luke to come. Emma's heart stopped. Luke at the resort. She could see him in less than a week. Maybe this was all meant to happen this year. God works in mysterious ways, you know. Her mom always had a way of making things seem meant to be. Yeah, she knew. "So you're doing it? You're really going to tell Luke the God you want him back?" Sarah bounced up and down in her chair in the teacher's lounge. "Shish," Emma said as she watched another teacher walk to the fridge. "I don't know if I will get enough gumption to actually say anything, but he's going to be there." Sarah giddily and thankfully quietly clapped her hands. "Oh, I really wish I could be there now." "I'm a nervous wreck, Sarah." Emma buried her head in her hands. She hadn't gotten much sleep the last couple nights. Even staying up until the early morning hours completing her report cards didn't tire her mind out enough to stop racing on and on about Luke. Images kept playing in her mind about what might happen, both good and downright devastating. Well, you have a couple more days of school to get through, and that's stressful enough. I swear these kids can't sit still to save their lives right now. Sarah rolled her eyes. I know. Thank goodness the next 2 days are full of holiday, sing-alongs, plays and all the other specials. Otherwise, we would never get through it. You're telling me? Sarah let out a huge sigh. I say we go shopping. It's the cure for everything. If you say so. Emma shook her head. Shopping had never been her thing, but Sarah had dragged her along many times this last year, and she was starting to get used to it. I do. We'll get you a sexy little winter outfit that Luke can't refuse. Sarah had coerced Emma to celebrate their last day of school with the promised shopping trip. Emma trailed after her friend through the mall, unable to really focus on anything as she rehearsed what she would tell Luke when they saw each other for the first time in a year. Hey, you there? Sarah asked, waving a hand in front of Emma's face. Oh yeah, sorry. Emma blinked a few times, readjusting to the present moment. This is the one, go try it on. Sarah shoved a red dress into her hands and pushed her towards the changing rooms. Emma tugged on the tight-fitting sweater dress and leggings, feeling quite sure this wouldn't be the one. One look in the mirror, though, told a different story. The red brought out the color in her lips and cheeks. Her long raven hair flowed over the dress that fit her perfectly, the thickness of the material hiding the fact that it might be a little too tight. It hugged her in all the right places and was forgiving in others. Yeah, this was the one. Let's see it, Sarah demanded from the other side of the door. She smirked as soon as Emma stepped out. I told you that was it. Now change so we can buy this stuff and get some ice cream. We have some planning to do. Over ice cream they found the perfect first hello, the perfect apology, and the perfect way of asking if Luke would be willing to give them another go. Emma left the shopping trip feeling more optimistic than she had thought possible. During the flight to the closest airport to the resort, she rehearsed the lines over and over in her head. Could this really work? Could Luke really find it in his heart to forgive her? Her mom waved from the baggage claim, and all of a sudden Emma felt like a young child again, finding relief in her mom's arms. They hugged for a good few minutes, rocking back and forth. A rush of appreciation coursed through her. She had spent too much time away from her parents. You look fantastic, honey. Her mom held her at arm's reach. Thanks, Mom. Emma's eyes roamed around them. Where's Dad? Oh, you know him, she waved her hand. He didn't want to pay the $20 or whatever it was to park, so he's wasting that much in gas driving around until we come out. We better hurry then, Emma said with a laugh, and quickly found her bag on the carousel. We're having dinner with the Adams tonight, her mom said as she linked arms with Emma. Are you ready for that? No, Emma said as heat shot up her spine. Just like ripping off a Band-Aid though, right? It's better to get it over with than continue the stress of wondering how it will go. Her mom nodded and pulled her closer. You'll feel better either way, honey. I guess, she said, though she didn't believe it. Has Betsy ever said anything about, if Luke has mentioned me? Men, they don't talk like we do. All she knows is that he works all the time and seems pretty miserable. I did that to him, Emma said, her stomach heavy with guilt. How could he ever forgive her, much less trust her again? I won't sugarcoat it for you. Her mom stopped once they were outside, and the cars slowly meandered through the circle, picking people up and dropping them off. You never have, Emma muttered. No, and I won't apologize for it. Sometimes the truth hurts, but the only way to heal is to go through that pain. Emma nodded. She had heard the same advice many times, though she had really messed up this time. Come on, her mother said with a smile. Here's Dad, and we haven't seen our baby girl for too long. So let's just enjoy each other, okay? Okay. Emma squeezed her mom one more time, and her dad ran from the car to give her a quick embrace before ushering them into the running car. Emma debated on wearing her new sweater dress tonight. She wanted to make a good impression on Luke, but did she want to play all her cards right away? Sticking with the color red, she wore her cashmere sweater with her hip-hugging slacks. She rubbed her hands down the soft sweater as she walked from her room to the small living quarters of her parents' timeshare condo. "You ready?" her dad asked as he shut off the television. "As ready as I'll ever be." Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. Her dad rose and pulled her into his arms. As he embraced her, Emma tightened her arms around him, overcome with how blessed she was to have such supportive parents. "Well, we all make mistakes, Emma Bear. It takes true strength to admit it, and a warrior to correct it." Her dad's voice tightened, but that would be as far as he would ever go. He grew up in the era where men didn't show emotion. "Thanks, Dad." She soaked in the strength he freely gave her, and then released him before the emotions caused her tears to spill forth and ruin her makeup. She didn't wear much, but her sapphire eyes always seemed to stand out even more with a touch of mascara. Luke loved her blue eyes, and she didn't want his first vision of her after a year to be bloodshot raccoon eyes. "Okay," her mother said as she walked into the room. "Deep breaths, everyone. Send up a quick prayer and let's see where tonight takes us." Emma's mouth quivered even as she smiled. She loved how her parents had always seen her life as a team effort, and it had been, that is, until she took off last year. Her throat constricted. She sure missed them. Maybe I should move back? It's not like she had much to keep her in the city. Sarah had been a great companion, but they would be friends no matter where she lived. Riding down the elevator, her mom took her hand and squeezed it, temporarily stopping the trembling. When they stopped on the first floor and walked towards the restaurant, her legs wobbled, threatening to give way on her. She did her best to focus on the black and white mountainous pictures lining the hallway until they made it to the lobby of the restaurant. "We're meeting the Adams," her father announced to the host. "Yes, they are already seated. Right this way, please." The young host, who looked like a cleaned-up ski bum, eyed Emma before escorting them through filled tables to the back of the room. Emma ignored the guy's glances in her direction. She was too anxious to think of anyone besides Luke. She followed behind the host and her mom, her dad taking up the rear, as only a gentleman does. She remembered him telling her so many times. Funny, her dates never seemed to realize that. "Here you go." The host pulled out her mom's chair. He blocked Emma's view of the table, but as he pulled out her chair, he stepped out of her way. Emma's eyes flickered past Mr. and Mrs. Adams, landing on Luke. She froze. Her heart stopped, her breathing stopped. In fact, it seemed as if the whole world had stopped. Emotions that she had hidden deep flooded to the surface in such a rush that the room darkened around the edges, and she thought she might actually pass out. When Luke looked up from his menu, his soft brown eyes went wide in shock. His mouth parted and the blood drained from his face, leaving it ashen. They stared at one another, each going through a mixture of high-stakes emotions. Neither moving. The whole table sat at the edge of their seats, as if waiting for the fate of the world. That is, all except the host. "Miss?" the ski bum questioned. Then his eyes shot to Luke and back to her. "Oh," he said and cleared his throat. I'll go get you some waters." Just like that, the spell dissipated. Emma blinked a few times and refocused on Luke, attempting a small smile. Luke's eyes clouded, narrowed, and then returned to his menu. "Honey, sit down." Her mother coaxed her into her seat. Emma sat and pulled her chair in, feeling as if the whole world had crashed around her. Luke's parents nodded their heads towards her. Mrs. Adams even attempted a small smile. Emma wanted to say a polite greeting, she wanted to grovel at their feet for forgiveness, but mostly she wanted to run from the room. The table was tensely quiet. The parents shot sideways glances at their children. Luke wouldn't look up. He wouldn't meet her eyes. He wouldn't even acknowledge her existence. He hated her. She knew it. This was a lost cause. Emma's shoulders slumped as she tried to focus on the menu. The words blurred. She blinked rapidly, refusing to shed tears in front of him. She deserved this. She deserved his disregard and more. Her mom snuck a hand under the tablecloth and rubbed her leg. The sign of comfort about did her in, until she was rescued by a most welcome distraction. Emmy? Emmy. The teenage girl squealed as she skipped to the table. Luke's little sister, Lila, pulled Emma out of her seat and into a huge hug. I didn't know you were going to be here. It was a last-minute decision, Emma said, her voice barely a whisper. A smile crept onto her face, though. She loved Luke's little sister and had missed her almost as much as Luke himself. Look at you. How could you have grown so much in only a year? I know, right? I got my license last month. Lila bounced up on her toes. Really? Congratulations. Sorry, I'm late. I couldn't decide what to wear, she announced to the table and then leaned in close to Emma. There's a cute waiter here that I met on the slopes today. I see, Emma said in a whisper and looked around. Which one is he? Lila sat next to Emma and right then Luke stood up, pushing his chair back in a rush. Emma did her best to keep her eyes on his sister, yet she couldn't help but track his movements out of the corner of her eye. Mrs. Adams followed him toward the alcove behind them, where the restrooms were. Lila searched the room, all the while telling Emma about how she met the cute waiter. Being a teacher, Emma had become adept at listening to two conversations at one time, and as she heard Luke's tight voice travel from around the corner, she did just this. How could you do this to me, Mom? Luke hissed. He paced in and out of Emma's view, though she kept her eyes focused on Lila. We didn't know she would be here until we arrived, Luke. I'm sorry. By that time I thought it would be better not to tell you and have you stress, or even worse, just leave, Mrs. Adams pleaded with her son. Well, why would that be worse? That's exactly what she did. Emma flinched at the anger in his voice. His pain still sat on the surface, and she was the one who had caused that. Her legs twitched, urging her to go now and apologize, and offer to leave in order to not cause him any further distress. There he is. Lila's excited whisper drew her attention away. The girl nodded towards a kid that didn't look quite 18. He threw his head back, in an attempt to get his blonde hair from out of his eyes, as he took an order at a table a few feet away. The kid smiled at the family, and she felt Lila swoon when a dimple popped in on his cheek. Isn't he divine? He is pretty cute, Emma said. Her attention then pulled back to the mother and son talking. Just come back and have dinner, his mother begged him. How can I eat with her sitting across from me? His voice now sounded more tormented than angry. Emma's heart clenched. She shouldn't have come. If nothing else, maybe this will give you the closure you have been searching for. Betsy leaned up and kissed his cheek. Go take a moment to compose yourself. I'll order for you. The lasagna, right? Luke gave a curt nod and his mother squeezed his arm, then returned to the table. Emma knew she should turn away, but she couldn't, and as Luke's eyes followed his mom, they met hers. His brow furrowed before he narrowed his eyes, turned on his heel, and strode down the hall and out of her sight. I'm sorry, Emma whispered as Betsy took her seat. Well, honey, all I have to say is you better have a good reason and patience. My boy's heart has been broken, and the mending isn't coming easy. Betsy stared at her hard, not giving her any mercy. Not that she deserved any. I should have never left. Emma bit her lip, doing her best to keep the tears from spilling forth. Well, it's about time you realize that, Lila said as if it was the oldest news in the world. Her tear-filled eyes met Lila's with an appreciative smile. A quick glance let her know that Betsy appraised her, as if lost in thought. His dad and her dad both studied the menu, like it held the latest news of the biggest game. Her mom, of course, looked on with empathy. Emma took a deep, shuddering breath, set her jaw, and decided she would not leave this resort until she gave Luke whatever he needed, either to have closure and move on, or if his heart was big enough for forgiveness, then as someone who would never take him for granted ever again. Dinner crawled on in the most uncomfortable fashion. Everyone did their best to keep the conversation going, well, everyone except Luke and Emma. Luke barely raised his eyes from his plate. When Emma's parents directed questions toward him, he would politely look up and respond amiably, although he never met Emma's eyes again. Emma found herself so torn up and distracted that she could hardly answer questions coherently, much less add anything of worth to other conversations. As soon as politely possible, Luke excused himself and fled from the restaurant. How would she ever get through this week? Maybe she should just return home. She shook her head and stood. She needed to get this confrontation over with now. Before she could convince herself that this was a bad idea, she sped away from the table, throwing out a farewell over her shoulder. Her heart raced and breath ceased when she saw Luke hanging his head in front of the elevator doors. She froze, her hands twisting in front of her as the strongest taste of fear caused her mouth to go dry. "Luke," Emma choked out, half whisper, half plea. He swiveled to face her, met her eyes for a heartbeat, and then abruptly turned away. "Please don't. I'm sorry. I feel awful for everything." Her voice wavered as she fought the emotions rolling around inside of her. Luke spun back towards her, his face red, his eyes narrowed. He looked angrier than she had ever seen him. "You're sorry? You feel awful? It's not like you just missed a Christmas party. It was our wedding. Our wedding, Em. It was supposed to be until death do us part, and you didn't even have the decency to let me know why." Tears stung Emma's eyes as they spilled over down her cheeks, moistening her red sweater, the one he liked best. She deserved this. As much as she wanted to flee, run from the room and sob her heartache, she stood fast. She squared her shoulders, lifted her eyes to meet his angry, pain-filled ones. She owed him enough to take her just deserves like a woman. "Do you have the decency to tell me why now? Why did you disappear 2 weeks before we committed our lives together?" Luke's voice faltered. His soul seemed bared before her, a deep hurt emptied his eyes. "Why, Em?" She stuttered. The problem was the reason she left seemed so petty now. All she could remember were the good times, the connection, the attraction, the love. Even with him as angry as he was now, her love for him reignited like a fire she couldn't contain. She reached for him. "Forget it," he said as the elevator dinged and the doors slid open. "Do me a favor and get the next one." He walked into the elevator, keeping his back to her, even as the doors closed behind him. As soon as the doors shut, she ran from the room and out into the freezing night air. The abrupt and significant temperature change shocked her enough to control her emotions. She took a few deep breaths that felt as if they froze in her throat, before she skulked back in the door. Emma's eyes were raw and her body felt emptied. Her parents had found her on her bed sobbing. They sat at the edge and supported her just as they always had. It reminded her of her teenage years, all the heartbreaks and friendship troubles they let her cry through. "Well, Luke wants an explanation." "That's understandable," her dad said pragmatically. "Of course it is. He deserves that at the least." Emma sniffed and dabbed her nose with a worn tissue. "But," her mom added the unsaid word, "we've been over this. The idea of my life being planned out by someone else terrified me. Now though, it feels like maybe I overreacted." She hung her head. "If I told him that, it would cause a fight. He wouldn't understand why I felt I had to leave, and I can't blame him, neither do I." "Everyone gets cold feet, Emma," her dad said, his voice devoid of emotion, a sign that he was disappointed. "I know I've asked you a million times, but why didn't you talk to him or us?" her mom asked. Emma shook her head, as tears she didn't know she had left burned her eyes once more. "Luke is going to need more than that if he's going to get past this enough to give you a second chance." Her dad scratched his chin. "I know, and I know I don't deserve another chance, but I love him. Seeing him tonight only confirmed it for me. No one can ever fill his place in my heart. Then we will figure out a way to get him to listen to you, and you need to do some real soul searching. If you don't, you might end up breaking his heart again." Her mother rubbed her back. Emma blanched at the thought of putting Luke through this again. She could never do that. Then again, she never would have thought herself capable of leaving the first time either. Maybe she had had a mental breakdown. Could she plead insanity? For that is exactly what this felt like right now. The next morning, Emma did her best to feel excited. She looked forward to skiing for the first time in over a year. Skiing had been the one sport that she had continued. Her parents had taught her as a young child, young enough that she couldn't remember learning. All she knew was the feel of her skis whooshing across the snow, turning with the most satisfying sound of blades carving through powder. She decided she would allow herself a few hours of bliss on the slopes before returning to the guilt that ravaged her. With her long raven hair pulled back into a ponytail and decked out in her ski clothes that still fit her perfectly, she wandered into the kitchen to find something for breakfast. Her dad sat at the table with a newspaper and an English muffin. He looked at her over the sports section. "Oh good, you're heading to the slopes too. Thought I should get in a better space before I tackled this problem." Emma shrugged as she popped an English muffin into the toaster. These timeshare suites had always been one of her favorite vacation spots. It came with everything you needed. "That's a good idea. Skiing always gave you the biggest attitude lift," her mom added to the conversation as she walked into the room. Emma had to admit that her mom still looked good in her ski outfit, even in her late 50s, and she hoped to inherit those genes. "I could sure use that today." Emma's thoughts traveled back to the time she tried teaching Luke how to ski. He snowboarded, something she detested, and teased him endlessly about the first time they came skiing together. How long ago was that now? 6 years? Since the moment they met, they had been inseparable. She even convinced her parents to fly out to have Thanksgiving with his family. Their parents had hit it off, and they had invited them out to the resort that Christmas. It had been a tradition as long as Emma could remember to spend Christmas at this resort. Without much family besides the three of them, they never had the need to stay in town or travel to extended family. 6 years ago had been the start of a ritual that the two families spent this time together, a custom that Emma had always loved. If she didn't fix this with Luke, it would become a tradition that would cause her insurmountable pain every time Christmas came around. She pushed the thought to the back of her mind and focused on skiing. The gondola left from right outside the hotel. Emma always felt so privileged to be able to walk right out of the building, pick her skis up at the sporting goods store that held them for resort guests, and traipse right into a gondola and on the slope. What a life! Riding up the gondola with her parents, she watched the sun sparkle off the glistening snow. It looked as if sugar coated the mountain below them. Perfect Colorado snow, light and fluffy. Her heart fluttered with excitement as she leaned forward in her seat. It had stormed a few days before, and snow still lingered in the branches of the trees they traveled over. A rightness filled her as if something told her all would be okay. "There's my sparkle." Her dad smiled at her and squeezed her knee. "The question is, do you think you can still keep up with your old man? I'll ski circles around you." The old banter cheered her, as a warmth she had forgotten about filled her soul. She leaned over and kissed his unshaven cheek. "I've missed you, Dad." "I've missed you too, Emma Bear." "Speaking of that," her mom interrupted, "there's a teacher retiring at your old school next year. Just thought I'd plant the seed." "Who?" Emma asked, ideas rushing through her mind faster than she could catch them. "Mr. Porter. I believe he taught 4th grade?" Emma's heart fluttered. "Isn't that your favorite grade?" Her dad raised his eyebrows. He taught at the local junior college, but Emma had always had a soft spot for the younger children. "It was while I student taught." "This is crazy." "God works in mysterious ways, my dear." Her mom sat back in her seat, a satisfied smile on her face. When the gondola reached the top, the wind whipped the snow in little twirls. Emma pulled up her hood. A little wind never stopped her from catching some turns, and it wouldn't today. Once they all had tightened their boots and clicked them into their skis, they slid down to their favorite lookout. From here they could see the whole valley below them, and across the mountain range of the Rockies. Nothing but snow-covered peaks for miles upon miles. Peace filled her. Yeah, she needed to get back to these mountains. They lived in her blood. Normal route? Her dad asked with a mischievous glint in his eye. Just don't forget to wait for me at the bottom. Her mother sighed playfully. You got it. Emma dug her poles into the snow and shoved off down the hill. Hey cheater, wait up. It only took her dad a second or two before he paralleled her. Emma turned and sliced through the snow, gliding effortlessly down the intermediate slope. This was one of the easier runs they frequented. Warming up before hitting the black diamonds always helped her confidence. Her dad passed her and did a 180, giving her a cheesy grin before turning back to face forwards. You would never guess that he would turn 60 in 3 months. The bliss that filled Emma felt untouchable, like nothing could shake it. This was where she belonged. She cut off into the trees, weaving in and out of the bits of fresh powder left off the groomed run. As she hit the berm back onto the trail, she jumped, landing smoothly. Ha! Past you, her mother shouted as she sped by towards the gathering of chairlifts at the bottom. Meet you at Lift 5. Lift 5 was her mother's favorite, an upper-end intermediate with black diamonds interwoven throughout. Her mom loved speeding down the intermediate, while Emma and her dad crisscrossed on the black diamonds. Emma dove back into the trees, wanting to feel the smooth powder slipping under her once again. She took her time weaving through them, and then found her dad a few yards away doing the same. They both hopped the berm at the end, landing on the groomed run together with a satisfying th-whump. Haven't lost it a bit, her dad told her, and they swooshed to a stop. I've missed this. Emma sighed, a satisfied sound that made everything feel all right. Do you see Mom? Yep, looks like she found someone to talk with. Let's go grab her before she ends up chatting them up all day. Her dad sped down the rest of the hill. Emma rolled her eyes. Her mom could hold a conversation with anyone, but she wasn't as chatty as her dad always claimed she was. She followed her dad down the slope, looking for her mom's purple jacket. She tucked in to speed past her dad, and then skied to a stop, spraying snow across her mom's legs. A giggle erupted at her joke, but she choked on it as she met surprised soft brown eyes. Her mom had been talking to the Adams, all of them. Luke didn't narrow his eyes when he saw Emma. Instead, they held a puzzled look, and then faded as if they became lost to memory. Emma couldn't take her eyes off him. Last night she had been consumed by the love that hammered through her. Today, in the sun and snow, his height and broad chest and boyish looks about melted the snow she stood on. Had she forgotten just how cute Luke was? You two coming? Lila asked from the line ahead of them. Their parents had paired off and already boarded the lift. Emma looked back at Luke, who had returned to avoiding her gaze. I'll ride with you, Lee. His deep voice vibrated through Emma. She remembered then that this chair only sat two. One of 2 lifts that were that small at this resort. Looks like she'd be traveling solo. Right as the lines ended at the chair, a snowboarder shuffled up the singles aisle and grabbed Lila's hand. Hey there, beautiful, you have room for me on this chair? Emma recognized the waiter from the restaurant the night before. Even with all the goggles and gear, his dimple made her sure. Lila blushed and glanced back at her brother. Emma could practically feel Luke roll his eyes, not that she could see from behind him, but she knew him too well. Sure. Lila skied forward, leaving her brother shaking his head. Another skier slid up behind Emma, and she moved forward. Before she realized it, she was at the loading zone next to Luke, and the chair came swinging around. Their eyes connected just as the chair swooped them up. You've got to be kidding me, Luke muttered as he brought the bar down and situated his board so it didn't hit her skis. This also happened to be one of the longest chair rides at the resort too. It traveled to the top of the ridge, and they had never upgraded this lift like many of the other high-speed quads. Emma's heart pounded. She pulled up her hood again, thinking maybe the wind caused the whirring sound within her. Yet it continued with every pulse. Luke's body heat traveled to her in the ebbs of the wind. So many memories played within her. She remembered how wonderful it used to feel sitting this close to him, snuggling in for warmth, as they traveled up the mountain telling stories of their childhood. Now it felt like torture to be this close to him, and yet so far away. Emma swallowed and licked her lips. She wished she could reach out and grab a handful of snow to soothe her dry throat, not that it would help. This was her chance. He couldn't walk away from her now, he would have to listen or at least hear her. Luke, Please don't, Em. There's nothing you can say that can take this last year back. Besides, I'm sure you have moved on, so it all doesn't matter anyway. So just do me a favor and don't talk. Moved on? Is that what he thinks? There's no one else. Her soft voice blew on the wind that whipped around them. I said I don't want to hear. Right then the chair jerked to a stop. Emma grabbed the bar, anxiety pumping through her. She'd been on chairs that stopped before, but the thought of being stuck this far off the ground with someone who might just want to throw her off was not a happy prospect. Then again, if they got stuck, it might just be her chance to reconnect with him. Really? Luke threw his hands up. What is this? Maybe divine intervention? Emma squeaked. Luke scowled at her, but something in his eyes softened when they met her sapphire ones. His cheeks had reddened in the cold wind that whipped around them. His lips parted, and he turned towards her fully. Divine intervention, huh? You've been praying, he scoffed, yet it didn't seem his heart was in the retort. More like pleading. Emma's voice quivered. Would he really listen to her? Fine. Let's hash it out. He scanned the line of chairs. Lila's giggle carried to them as she peeked back and gave them a little wave. Maybe she had been praying, too. I'm not a very good hasher. Emma bit her lower lip and realized just how cold they were. She zipped her jacket all the way up and tucked her chin down inside of it. No, you never have been good about telling things straight, have you? Luke looked back over at his sister, his gloved hands tightening on the bar in front of them. One of my many faults, Emma whispered. She took a deep breath and shoved the words out before she lost the nerve. It was wrong of me to leave, especially without talking with you. Do you know I was worried sick? I thought something had happened to you. It was as if her statement caused the sprocket to turn on full force as his words spewed from him. You never answered any of my calls or texts. Nothing. Not a word. I finally got your parents to at least tell me you were alive. I had to cancel the reservations, the flowers, the caterers, the guests, everything. Do you know how embarrassing that was, especially when I had no reason to give them? And all while my heart felt as if its broken shards ripped me open, leaving me raw and bleeding. Luke's jaw clenched. Tears streamed down Emma's face. She had caused him that pain. She had left him with that mess. I could say sorry 1,000 times, and it would never be enough. Her heart thundered, and she did her best to not shrink back into the corner of the lift chair. It wasn't Luke that caused the anxiety, but the confrontation itself, and the fact that she knew she was in the wrong. You're right about that, Luke muttered. He adjusted in the seat, making the chair swing, and Emma grabbed hold of the bar. Are you going to tell me why? Give me some sort of reason? Emma swallowed. All the lines she practiced with Sarah escaped her, whipped away on the wind that blasted her frozen cheeks. Her dad's words echoed within her, though she couldn't come up with a reason he would understand, and she couldn't lie. She never had been good at it. I freaked. That's it, he scoffed. You took off 2 weeks before our wedding without a word because you were scared? Luke sounded as if he couldn't believe the audacity of her words. Everyone gets scared before their wedding. He thrust his gloved hand across his hair, before pulling his hood back over his head. You were scared, she squeaked. Of course. Dedicating your life to someone isn't something to be taken lightly. He blew out, his breath crystallizing in the air. Why did you just run? Am I that intimidating that you couldn't talk to me about it? Emma couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. Was he intimidating? Yes, but not in the way he meant. She never felt scared of him. He always listened to her, always calmed her fears, yet when his mind was made up, it didn't seem like anything could change it. Did I bite my nails too much? Watch too many sports? Did I not treat you with respect and love? He choked the last word out as if it pained him. Sure, there were things he did that annoyed her, and sure she got tired of watching basketball. That season was so long, but that wasn't it. She tucked her face further into her jacket. No, you always treated me well. Her muffled words brought Luke to face her. I don't understand, Luke said, his eyes imploring hers. Can I plead insanity? The words escaped her mouth before she had time to catch them. It wouldn't be too hard to believe. A hint of a smile tweaked one side of his lips, but disappeared so quickly it might have been her imagination. I didn't do anything to cause you to leave. She thought of the fear that had consumed her during their last dinner together. He had seemed so sure of everything, had their whole life planned out to a T. There was no room for negotiation, or at least it seemed like it at the time. Emma took a deep breath. How could she explain this in a way he would understand, especially when it didn't seem that important anymore? It wasn't you, Luke. She sighed as if her whole life rode on her next words, as they just might. It's difficult to explain. My reasons for leaving don't seem so valid anymore, not even to me. Will you try? You owe me that, at least. Emma nodded, took a deep breath, and sent up a silent prayer. The last conversation we had overwhelmed me and left me full of irrational fear of the future. I couldn't see beyond the need to escape. The thought of trying to talk to you about it caused a full-fledged panic attack. I don't know why confrontation scares me so much, but it does. She glanced at Luke, a blank stare on his face. So no, you didn't cause me to leave. It was my own doing. She dropped her head, that rock of guilt churning deep inside of her. Luke remained silent, his eyes staring off in the distant, reliving the past. You mean when I talked about our future plans? Yeah, your planned-out future. Emma didn't mean for the words to come out as harsh as they did. She realized then, she had some of her own anger to deal with. Oh, my plans? I thought they were ours? It was the same things we had been talking about for years. He furrowed his eyebrows and searched Emma's eyes. You weren't speaking up again. Emma shrugged. Luke sat back in the chair and shut his eyes tightly. How many times have I told you? You need to speak your mind. I didn't want to start a fight, she whispered. What now or then? He opened his eyes and met hers with intensity. Stating an opinion might open up a discussion, it doesn't have to be a fight. We can disagree without arguing, and we would have found a compromise. That's what couples do. You make it sound so easy, she muttered. Was that really the only reason you left? His face reddened further, and Emma wondered if it was from the biting wind or emotion. She nodded her head, feeling even more childish and ridiculous than ever. There was no other guy that swept you off your feet and carried you away from me? A flash of jealousy crossed his face. No other guy can compare to you. She whispered the words, but they still reached him and reeled him back like a punch. I don't get this, Em. He looked away, watched his sister for a moment, and then met Emma's eyes intensely. Did you not love me enough to work through this? Emma swallowed and her heart raced. No, I still love you. Luke's eyes widened and he leaned forward as if he didn't hear her right. I don't know what to say. He shook his head in obvious disbelief. I would go to counseling, get help in learning to speak up, she pleaded with him. Did you feel like this the whole 5 years we were together? How much of what we did was something that wasn't what you wanted? I never minded any of that. It was only the future. You seemed like you had it all planned out, and there was no room for what I would have wanted. The wind whipped, causing the chair to swing on the line. Even in the intense moment, a part of her had to quell the fear of falling from so high up. This is crazy. He looked off into the snow-covered trees. I always asked what you wanted. Emma gave him time to process. It would take a lot longer than the time they had up here, stuck on the lift. In fact, they didn't have much more time before she froze. Once the words were out and Luke hadn't fully exploded on her, the nervous heat she had dissipated, leaving her teeth chattering and body shivering. What is he thinking? Luke spat out. Emma followed his eyes to his sister, who now was wrapped in the snowboarder's arms. Probably thinking he needed to keep your sister warm, Emma chattered out. Luke glared at her, opened his mouth and closed it again. His anger still sent off rushes of body heat, and she yearned to crawl into his lap. That was off the table. You can't crawl back into your ex-fiancé's lap after leaving him 2 weeks before the wedding. Emma buried her hands under her arms in hopes of keeping frostbite at bay. Her fingers hurt with the cold, and her toes throbbed with it. She hadn't been this frozen for years. The wind whipped against them in another gust, rocking their chair again. "What's going on up there?" "We're freezing here," a man called from behind them. Her thoughts went to her parents then. Were they okay? They had been several chairs ahead of them. Maybe they had gotten off. Just then she saw a group of 4 skiers coming down the slope towards them. As they got closer, Emma made out her mother's purple jacket. "Mom? Dad?" she called out, grabbing the bar as she leaned over. Luke leaned forward to see their parents clearer as they slid to a stop beneath them. The slope was steep and ungroomed. Not her mom's favorite terrain. In fact, she hadn't skied off the groomed runs for several years. "Mom?" Lila came out from the kids' arms and bent over the railing. "Are you all doing okay?" Emma's dad asked as he pulled his goggles up, revealing his troubled blue eyes. "It's freezing," Emma shouted through the next gust of wind. "Do you know what's going on?" Luke asked. "Something about the motor freezing up. The mechanics are working on it right now," Luke's dad replied. "Keep your toes and fingers moving, Emma Bear." Her dad's voice held concern. The weather had warned of lower than normal temperatures that day, but the sun had been shining, and it wasn't near as breezy down in the mountain valley where their hotel lay. "Kyle gave me a couple of those hand warmers," Lila cheered out. She didn't seem to be in any distress at the moment. Hand warmers sounded nice right now. Emma scrunched her fingers into her palm within her mittens, and then shoved them under her arms again. She wiggled her toes painfully in her boots. Was she just not as prepared as the others? "How much longer do you think they'll be?" Emma chattered down. They weren't sure. Her dad shoved his poles down into the snow, a sure sign of his frustration. Emma squeezed her eyes shut and bit her cheeks. Her legs were already going numb, and her fingers and toes felt like they were frozen hot dogs. Her whole body shivered as she wished she had donned her thermals this morning. "We'll ski down and see what they can do to get you guys off there, or at least bring you some of those hand warmers and a blanket." Her dad turned to say something to the group below them, his words lost on the wind. "You guys hang in there. You'll make it through this." "Please keep each other warm," Emma's mom called out, emotion filling her voice. Emma chanced a glance at Luke, and was met by a look of sheer terror. She wouldn't ask him to put himself in that position, but she sure yearned he would offer. She watched their parents slowly make their way back into the trees to the quicker groomed runs. People on the chairs grumbled. Some threatened to jump off, but they wouldn't. At this spot they were at least 30 feet off the ground, and though it was mainly powder, you never knew what was beneath it. Luke observed the ground below them, as if he actually considered it. "Lila, you okay?" "Yeah, big bro. Kyle is keeping me warm. You should do the same for Emma. I can see her shivering from here, and it's not like she has a lot of insulation." Emma's face burned. She had always been thin, but the comment, shouted like it was, sent a rush of heat through her, and she had to say she felt grateful for that. Luke growled low and shifted his weight. "Come on," he said. He wrapped his arm around her and pulled her body flush against his, well, as much as possible in a chairlift. Emma reveled in his body heat that traveled into her immediately. She tucked down and kept herself rolled into a ball against him. Being this close to Luke brought wave after wave of emotion rolling through her, until she didn't know if she still shook from the cold or from being in Luke's arms. "It's not like this is the worst off we ever been." Luke pulled her closer, his voice deeper and richer. "Michael's cabin?" Emma asked, snuggling into him. He smelled, as he always had, of spicy cologne and spearmint mouthwash. The aroma heightened her emotions, and her eyes filled. Yeah, that one was pretty bad. I never thought that storm would end. Luke rubbed her legs briskly. Do you not have thermals on? Emma shook her head, feeling too foolish to speak. I don't know where you've been, but you always wear thermals this time of year on the mountain. I know. I guess I just got too used to California weather. That's where you've been? Luke asked with a scoff. California? Wow. Never would have thought of that. You've always been a mountain girl. There are mountains in California, she defended. I do miss the Rockies though, and the people. You remember you weren't prepared for the cabin trip either. Luke changed the subject. I remember. I also remember that after that trip, you interrogated me about what I packed for every trip we had together. She couldn't help the smile that creased across her face at the thought. Yeah, sorry about that. His arms loosened a little. I actually appreciate that. It made me feel like you cared. I did care. His statement squeezed her heart. It sounded so final, as if he might no longer care. Emma could hear his heart pounding beneath her. She wanted the light-hearted conversation back. We had some good times. Emma sighed. Yes, we did. I'm sorry I ruined it all. Me too, Luke whispered. Emma barely heard Luke's whisper over the gusting wind. His words sat heavy upon her, as she felt her mistakes binding her and Luke to a life without one another. She clung to him, knowing it would probably be the last time she would be in his arms. Emma spent 45 minutes wrapped in Luke's embrace, but when the lift screeched and swung forward, disappointment filled her. She knew that as soon as they were safely off the lift, Luke would go back to ignoring her. She had hurt him too much to even hope of a reconnection. The lift erupted in cheers as they began slowly moving towards the top of the mountain. Being in Luke's arms definitely kept her warm, yet she worried if her legs would hold her once it came time to dismount the chair. Once they could see the top, Luke let her go. The cold replacing his warmth felt eerie and lonesome. With concern, she watched the girl she had come to see as a sister disembark off the lift. Yet, Lila glided off as if it were any other chair ride. Luke lifted the bar, and Emma scooched forward in her chair. Her legs tingled from being asleep, and she knew as soon as she stood up the pins and needles would start. With a deep breath, she pushed off. Her legs wobbled, threatening to give out. Luke grabbed her arm as she leaned to one side, his snowboard shuffle throwing her off. Awkwardly, they made it to the sign where her family stood waiting. Her dad took her arm and Luke, seeing her secured, let go. She kept her eyes downcast, not wanting him to see the emotions storming in them. We were about to ski down to you, but they told us it would be running in just minutes. Her dad handed her hand warmers as he spoke. They already had heated to a wonderful level. She put one in each mitten, and then thought of Luke and handed him one. I'm fine. You should probably upgrade your gear. Emma chanced to look at him, and noticed that he actually met her eyes. Rather than anger, confusion lived there. He's right, sweetie, her mom said with a smile. You've had the same gear since you were in high school. They would be fine if I hadn't been stranded on a lift for an hour. Emma shrugged. She wasn't used to sitting still in her gear. She stamped her feet, trying to ward off the pins and needles that pricked them. Legs fall asleep? Luke asked, a small curve to his lips. Yeah, she said, watching him. He was talking to her, even voluntarily. Another gust of wind swept around the group, and she wrapped her arms around herself. You should get back to the hotel and get warm. Her dad rubbed her back. A hot tub sounds divine right now, Emma chattered. Without Luke's warmth, her body quivered once again. She knew herself. Without a hot shower or a soak in the jacuzzi, she would shiver the rest of the day. Let's get you back then. Her mom skied up to her and waited for her to start heading down the hill. Where did Lila disappear to? Betsy asked. Probably with that Casanova she snuggled with on the chair the whole time, Luke muttered. It didn't seem like he liked the idea of his little sister growing up. It's a good thing she had him. I don't think she noticed how cold it was while we were up there. Emma shrugged. She remembered what it was like to be 16 with a crush. I see her, Mr. Adams said stiffly. I'll talk with her. I'll join you. Mrs. Adams followed him. Oh, I sure remember those days, Emma's dad joked. Dad? Emma slugged his shoulder playfully. I wasn't that boy crazy. He lifted his eyebrows. Let's just go. I can't feel my legs. Those hand warmers are awesome though. She made a turn to test out her numb feet. You coming, Luke? Emma bit her lower lip. Would he accept her invitation? Would he throw it into her face? Luke's brow furrowed. His soft brown eyes met hers, dark and uncertain. He glanced back at his parents, talking with his sister, and then back to her. I need to check in with Lila. Of course. Emma dropped her gaze and shoulders. Thank you for keeping me warm up there. Luke nodded and then skied off towards his family. Emma sucked back the bite of pain that caused, took a shaky breath, and then without turning towards them said to her parents, Ready? Give him time, sweetie. Her mom's kind words released the hold she had. She turned her skis down the slope and slid down the mountain while her tears left icy trails down her cheeks. Emma immediately got into her suit and a warm robe and walked to the jacuzzi. Her parents had offered to join her, but she encouraged them to get back to the slopes. She needed to be alone. She needed space to process all that had happened on the lift. There was no question she still was in love with Luke. She knew that the moment she saw him in the restaurant. Being so close to him today only confirmed it, and confirmed it with a fervor. Her heart still raced when she thought of being in his arms once more. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. The hot water soaked into her bones, and she felt her body finally relax and loosen. Christmas music played over the loudspeaker in the pool courtyard. She let herself drift with the poignant tunes. Christmas had always pulled at her heartstrings. It reminded her of the good old Christmas movies that left you happy and fulfilled. Movies like that, with big families and wonderful traditions, left her feeling nostalgic. She wished she had a big family, with all the delightful chaos and noise and hugs and laughter. Being an only child left her with an emptiness. She didn't blame her parents. She knew they felt lucky to have her and grateful every day they did. If she had any say though, she would fill her house with a passel of kids. 4 would be good. A smile stretched her lips as she thought of babies and toddlers and young kids running amok in the house. Does it feel that good? Luke's deep voice interrupted her wishful thoughts. Oh, hi. Yes, it does, she replied, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks. He didn't need to know she envisioned him as the father of those 4 rambunctious kids in her dream. Maybe he would blame her red face on the hot water. Would you mind company? He shivered as he bounced from one foot to the other. Never from you. Emma dipped her head, embarrassed at her forwardness. Luke immediately submerged himself in the water with a very content sigh. I think that last run made me realize just how cold I was. It's freezing. I can't remember it being this cold last year. Luke's eyes clouded over. I don't remember much from last year. I'm sorry, Emma said. Would she ever be able to forgive herself for the pain she caused Luke? A familiar Christmas song played over the speakers. Luke let out a small laugh, and Emma glanced at him in confusion. Do you remember this song? Luke chuckled again. The Christmas Eve talent show at this resort, 4 years ago. Emma searched her memory as she listened to the song. A small laugh escaped her as well. When Lila performed that hula hoop dance, she had practiced every day for a month solid. Then, right at the height of her number, the hula hoop flew right out of her hand and landed around that old man. Emma finished for him, and they laughed at the memory. She was so embarrassed, but when that old man came up and danced the rest of the song with her, he broke into a fit of laughter. Emma joined him, feeling the stress release from her shoulders and seeing it release from his as well. It felt good laughing like this with Luke again. As their laughter faded, Luke sighed. I haven't laughed like that for too long. Me neither. She watched his face, searching for any lingering feelings for her. She wanted to ask if he thought he could ever forgive her, but was too afraid. What if he said he couldn't? Maybe we should go to the talent show tomorrow, for old time's sake? Luke measured her with his eyes. His jaw clenched as he sat up on the side, steam rising off of him. We'll see. He stood and wrapped the towel around himself. You leaving already? Emma asked and bit her lip to keep from pouting. I told my parents I would meet them for lunch. He turned away and took a few steps before looking back. Thank you for the laugh. It was my pleasure, Emma said and smiled what she hoped was her sweetest smile. You going back on the slopes this afternoon? His question gave her hope. I don't think so, don't want to push my luck, you know. She shrugged. In truth, the thought of getting stuck on a lift in that wind again sent her shivering and deeper into the hot water. Understandable. Tomorrow is supposed to be warmer, if you wanted to chance it then. He looked down at her, his cheeks redder than from just the hot water. Is that an invitation? Emma asked hopefully. Luke shrugged and turned, but not before she saw a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Emma had just finished putting on her ski pants, over thermals, when a knock sounded on her bedroom door. Hold on, she said as she slipped her turtleneck on and walked towards the door. Her mom stood there, a smile from ear to ear. You have a visitor. Emma peeked out over her mom's shoulder. Luke sat at the bar and talked with her dad. He looked up and met her eyes, giving her a sheepish grin. It's working, sweetie, her mother whispered to her. Emma turned to grab her jacket and boots, unable to swallow the smile that consumed her face. Could he really forgive her? If anyone had that big of a heart, Luke did. Merry Christmas Eve, Luke. Emma smiled at him, eyeing his snow clothes and the beanie he twisted in his hands. Happy Christmas Eve to you, Em. Too early for hitting the slopes? He asked. Oh, you're going to brave another chance? Her dad teased. Sure, but I'm avoiding that chair for the rest of this trip. She rummaged in her pockets and pulled out a couple hand warmers. And I have these. Good idea, sweetie. Her mom kissed her cheek. You two have fun. You aren't coming? Luke asked even though he walked backwards towards the door. We still need to eat. We'll hit them later, her dad nodded. Oh, I haven't eaten. Emma thought about the last time she tried skiing on an empty stomach, and she didn't feel like repeating that. I thought we could get bagels on our way to the gondola, Luke offered. I wouldn't want you passing out on a stranger again. Luke's eyes crinkled. Do you have to remind me? Emma shoved him playfully while she slipped her feet into her ski boots. Be safe, Emma Bear. Find some more powder for me, her dad called after them. Emma turned before the door closed and blew them kisses. Happiness flooded her. She couldn't believe how events had changed so quickly. She watched Luke, a feeling of lightness filling her. Come on, Slowpoke. I swear, for a sport that has been around for so long, you would think they could figure out a way to make walking easier in those things. Emma did her best to walk quicker in the cumbersome ski boots, but it was an awkward movement at best. She agreed with Luke. Couldn't they have come up with something a little more agile? Luke ordered her favorite bagel for her, paying for it and ignoring her attempts to give him money. He had always been chivalrous, but she didn't want him to feel like he had to. She owed him, not the other way around. While on the gondola, Emma enjoyed the warm bagel with strawberry cream cheese. She hadn't eaten one since she was here last year, right before she left him. The rock of guilt sat heavy in her stomach. She had so many questions for him, and wanted to know what he had been up to the last year, but was afraid bringing up the last year of her being gone would result in unwanted disconnection. How's work? Emma hoped the question didn't provoke too many past hurts. Pretty good, actually. He watched her carefully. With the extra hours I have put in this last year, I am up for promotion. His slight shrug didn't hide the contentment in his eyes. Right on schedule, she teased. If he continued meeting his planned goals, he would be a junior partner by the end of 5 more years. So what's it like in California? The way Luke said it sounded like it tainted his tongue. It's busy and warm. People aren't as friendly. The kids aren't as well behaved. Emma thought about the differences. It probably wasn't a state thing, more of a small town versus city thing. You're teaching then? Yep, taking over for a teacher on extended maternity leave. When does the position end? She comes back in February. Emma hadn't thought of that. In less than 2 months, she would be out of a job. Maybe Mr. Porter retiring came at even a better time than she realized, though that would still leave her without a job until the fall. You like it there? Luke asked, as he crumpled up his wrapper, squeezing it tighter and tighter. It's not home. She watched Luke, looking for any hints of what he might be thinking and for his reaction. A position opened up at my old school for next year. He raised his eyes to hers. You going to apply for it? I'm thinking about it. Emma toyed with the last bite of her bagel before she popped it into her mouth. If she got the job, she would be back home in her childhood town, closer to Luke, but not too close. You know there are teaching jobs everywhere, right? Luke searched her eyes as if asking something that she didn't quite get. True. It leaves many possibilities open. She nodded, wondering at his intention. You still thinking about going back for your master's? I don't think I could work and do that. I would have to move back home. Don't get me wrong, my parents are wonderful, but after being out from under their roof for this long, I don't think I could handle being there again. Emma pictured herself having to tell her parents where she was going, who she would be with, and when she would be home. This last year had felt so free in that aspect. No, she couldn't go back to that life. I get it, Luke said. I wouldn't want to go back home either. The gondola shook as it attached at the unloading area. Luke stood and held his hand out to Emma. Ready to eat some border snow? He chuckled. If I remember correctly, it's usually you eating snow after you smack your face in it. Emma laughed as she exited the gondola and took her skis from the resort worker. Thank you, she said to the attendant and headed out of the building to the snow. You don't give me enough credit, Luke pouted as he caught up with her. Emma froze and looked up at him as she tightened her boots. You're right, I don't. I'll fix that right away. Luke watched her dazed before he rushed to hook his board up to his boots. Then they skied down the slope to the valley with 5 different lifts to choose from. Emma's hands shook. She hadn't thought she would be this nervous, getting on a chair lift again. Let's start simple and go with number 1, Luke said, nodding in that direction. Anything but 5, Emma said, noticing the quiver in her voice. Hey, don't worry. That was a fluke and it's an old chair. Besides, there's hardly a breeze up here today. He sent her a smile as he headed towards lift 1. He was right. She hardly noticed any wind. With a deep breath, she followed Luke into the vacant lift line. Being as it was Christmas Eve, and the ski resort was practically empty, no one waited, so they skied right up to the lift and boarded a chair before she really even had the chance to think about it. Even though the chair could sit 4, Luke sat close to her and his warmth lending her comfort. She loved these days skiing with hardly anyone else here. It felt as if they had the mountain to themselves. Today especially, she was grateful for that. Thanks for coming out this morning. Lila is all swoony on that guy, and my parents only like the groomed trails. I could really use some tree runs today. Luke eyed her. I appreciate you allowing me to join you. Emma looked down. She wanted to meet his eyes, but was so afraid of what she might find. Hope might be the death of her, but the lack of it certainly would be. Skiing with Luke, even though he was a knuckle-dragger, had always been fun. He was up to almost any terrain and loved interweaving with her turns. Emma loved to look back at the tracks they left in the snow because it looked like a chain of infinite signs. Infinite just like their love. Was it though? Could Luke's love be that forgiving? Would he trust her with his heart again, even after all the pain that she caused him? Emma pushed those thoughts from her mind as they weaved in and out of the trees, finding little jumps, bits of powder, and some of the best snow left at the resort. They would catch each other's eyes through the trees, broad grins shining through the branches. Each time her heart flooded with warmth. She could almost pretend like the last year never happened. Almost. On the way back down the gondola, Emma's legs thrummed with exhaustion. A contented smile lingered on her lips, and she noticed Luke showcase one as well. It had been a great day on the slopes. The weather had warmed up a little, but not too much to melt the snow into slush. And no lifts broke down on them. That was an awesome day, Luke said, his eyes half closed. One of the best. And definitely the best I've had in a long time. I've missed you, Em. Luke had his eyes all the way closed now and his brows furrowed. I've missed you too, Luke. I'm sorry I caused us so much pain. Emotion lined her voice as her eyes brimmed with tears. Luke blindly reached for her hand. The gesture catapulted the tears from the brink, and they slid unbidden down her cheeks. Luke didn't meet her eyes again until they stood in front of her door. He shuffled his feet and cleared his throat. You still wanting to go to that talent show tonight? There's a dance afterwards. I would love to, Emma said, leaning up on her toes towards him. She caught herself and quickly lowered her eyes. Luke took a step towards her, leaving her heart racing that much faster. His hand brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and then caressed around her neck. He lowered his forehead to hers, and took in a shuddering breath. I don't know if I can do this, Em, Luke whispered haggardly. Emma bit the inside of her cheek, and nodded her head, feeling his skin against hers as she moved. It would be a lot to ask, she said, her voice strangled in grief. He kissed her forehead, before turning away, and walking back towards the elevators. Emma's heart broke. She wanted so much to have hope, and today had given her so much more. His words just now crushed it all. It had been too much to ask, too good to be true. Then a small spark of determination lit inside of her. Luke hadn't said no. She would prove to him that she could be trusted with his heart once more, no matter how long it took. Tonight was the night. Emma pulled out her new red sweater dress. It was time to raise the stakes and ante up. She knew exactly how Luke liked her hair best, and the color of eye makeup that used to make him drool. Pulling out all her tricks, she curled her freshly washed hair until it hung in waves down her back. She lined her sapphire eyes with purple eyeliner, and put on an extra application of volume mascara. She slid her vanilla lip gloss over her already red lips, dusted her nose with a splash of powder, and then touched her vanilla perfume on all the pulse points. She knew his weaknesses, and she wasn't too proud to utilize them, all of them. Walking out of the room, she caught herself in the full-length mirror on the closet and nodded her head in approval. She hadn't looked this good in years, and she was going to make sure he noticed that too. Her dad whistled when she came out into the living area. Well, if that doesn't convince him, Emma Bear, he trailed off, shaking his head. You look amazing, sweetie. Her mom nodded her head in approval. Thanks, you too. Emma's heart filled with love for her parents. Her stomach fluttered with nervousness. If this didn't work, she wasn't sure what would. You two ready? Just waiting on you, her dad teased as he turned off the television and offered her his arm. Once in the hall, he offered his other arm to her mom. They walked in this manner to the restaurant where the same ski-bum host as before led them to the table where Luke and his family already sat. Emma held her breath as Luke looked up from the menu. His eyes first met hers and then traveled down and back up. His face turned red, and she swore she could see a reflection of the old Luke in his eyes. The host pulled her chair out for her, but she kept her gaze locked on Luke as she sat. If he doesn't get it, I'd be happy to show him what he's missing, the host whispered in her ear. Emma's eyes widened in surprise and her lips parted. Heat spread up her cheeks, and suddenly it felt too hot to be wearing a sweater dress. Luke's brows furrowed, and he glared at the young host strutting towards the front of the restaurant. Well, you certainly made an impression on him, Lila whispered across the table to her, but everyone heard her. The comment deepened Emma's blush, and she glanced at Luke. Jealousy flared in his eyes. She knew that look would know it anywhere. Score one, she thought, and then felt her stomach twist for even thinking that. That's Zeke. Kyle told me he has the hots for you. Lila gave a sideways glance towards her big brother before turning away and winking at Emma. Lila knew the game too well, but what high schooler didn't? Well, Zeke better keep his distance, Luke muttered. Emma's heart skipped a beat. If Luke voiced that, then there really was a chance. The rest of the table squeezed their lips together, or ducked their heads in an attempt to suppress smiles. It was nice to know she had the support of both sets of parents on this endeavor. It made it that much easier. Luke spent the remainder of dinner staring at Emma and glaring at the host, who kept making excuses to walk by their table. When the bathroom call couldn't be ignored any longer, Emma rose and excused herself. "I'll go with you," Luke said immediately, already rising from the table. "I don't think you're allowed to go where she's going, big bro," Lila teased. "I'll walk her to the door then, lil sis." He shot back at her. Luke took Emma's arm as they walked the few feet to the alcove where the restrooms were. "You really didn't need to escort me," Emma said as they reached the ladies' room door. "Well, I didn't want to leave you unattended with the attention you are getting." Luke eyed the host, who watched them from the front of the restaurant. Zeke winked in their direction and Luke stiffened. "Well, if I didn't know better, I would say you were jealous." Emma couldn't help but tease him. I just didn't want you to have to deal with." He tugged at his black silk shirt, and she noticed how good he looked in it. Emma opened the restroom door, but stuck her head out a moment later. "Luke?" She made sure she had his attention. "You don't have to be jealous. There's always only been you." She shut the door on his surprised face and bit her lower lip. Did she just go too far? By the look of adoration in his eyes when she exited the bathroom, she realized she had gone just far enough. When they returned to the table, her dad yawned and stretched. "Well, I don't know about you folks, but I'm ready to put my old bones to bed." "You're not going to the talent show and dance, Dad?" Emma asked, a little shocked. "I figured I would leave that up to the youngsters." He winked, rose, and offered a hand down to his wife. "Yes, us as well," Mrs. Adams quickly chimed in, yanking her husband up with her. "Well, Kyle gets off in an hour, and he said he would meet me there." Lila beamed. "Stay with your brother." Mr. Adams pinned her with a look Emma remembered too well. Lila rolled her eyes. "Sure, Dad." Emma gave her parents kisses on the cheeks and bid them good night. She knew what they were up to. The looks of conspiracy between the couples was hard to miss. She glanced towards Luke. He shrugged and smiled at her. He wasn't fooled either. The talent show had the three of them laughing hysterically. "The bloopers are the best part," Luke whispered to Emma in between the acts. He sat close to her, his leg flush against hers from hip to knee. She reveled in his closeness, enjoying his heat and spicy minty aroma. At intermission, Kyle strutted over to them with Zeke tailing behind him. He eyed Emma and gave her a wink as they squeezed past and sat in the seats Lila had saved for them. Once everyone was seated again, Kyle leaned over. "Hey man, I never got the chance to talk before." "I'm Kyle." "Yes, I know. It's all I hear about anymore," Luke retorted as he shook the guy's hand. Kyle's eyebrows shot up as he looked at a red-faced Lila. "Luke?" Lila elbowed him and glared threateningly. "This is Zeke." Kyle nodded toward his buddy. "Yeah, I know about him too." Luke's voice deepened as he spoke from between his teeth. Then he wrapped his arm around Emma. "This is my fiancé, Emma." Emma's lips parted, and her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what to say or do. Was he just saying that to keep the ski bum from thinking he had a shot? "Fiancé, huh?" Zeke smirked. Emma plastered on a smile, not willing to trust her voice at the moment. The announcement that the intermission was over saved her from having to respond. She sat back in her seat, Luke's arm still around her. Crazy thoughts and emotions ran through her mind, so much so that she didn't really pay attention to the second half of the show. As the announcer wrapped up the show and invited everyone to stay for the dance, Luke leaned over, his whispered words causing a tingle to sweep through her. "You okay?" Yeah, fine. She responded quickly. You just seemed preoccupied. Luke leaned back to get a better look at her. I'm okay, really. She gave him her best smile. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable with my comment before. Is this too much? He squeezed his arm around her a little tighter. Not at all, she said, not having to force her smile anymore. Good, he said, and eyed the ski bum as the guy got up. Zeke squeezed by and winked at Emma. Save a dance for me. He escaped before Luke had a chance to reply for her. How about a hot chocolate while we wait? Emma asked the three of them, before Luke's jealousy got the better of him. Sounds good to me. Lila cheered. While employees turned the performance room into a dance hall, the four of them drank hot chocolate at the bar. The DJ hooked up all his equipment and started the dance off with an upbeat pop song that Lila immediately squealed about, dragging Kyle out onto the dance floor. Guess I've been out of the loop for a while because I don't know that song, Emma said as she watched the younger girls sway and bob to the tune. I didn't either before the drive up here. Luke shook his head. I don't understand the dance moves anymore either. Emma laughed. I don't think you ever did. Hey. Luke folded his arms across his chest. At least the fast songs, Emma said to bolster him. The slow songs you definitely have down. Those are the only ones I like to dance to, anyway. They're my favorite too. Emma looked up at him, from under her lashes. The urge to snuggle into his arms like she used to overwhelmed her. She took a deep breath to resist the impulse. As much as she wanted it, she had to play this right. Both of their futures depended on it. You want a refill? He nodded to her empty mug. No thanks, I'll get all hyped up if I drink too much all at once. Luke burst into a fit of laughter. What? Emma questioned, wiping her hand self-consciously across her mouth. It wouldn't have been the first time she had a whipped cream mustache. Do you remember that first winter formal? You drank that mocha, not realizing that mochas had coffee in them? Luke wiped the tears sneaking from his eyes. Yes, I do. Emma lost herself to the memory. She had always been sensitive to caffeine. Hot chocolate would be enough to get her hyped up, but coffee amped her up so much, people probably thought she had spiked her drink. She had bounced around the entire dance, dancing to the fast songs and swaying a little too fast during the slow ones. The mocha night had happened a month after Luke and she had met each other's eyes across the room. 1 month of delightful tingles of getting to know each other. He had always been the gentleman, and she had waited impatiently for him to initiate their first kiss. That night she thought for sure would be it. She ended up so amped on the mocha that she never stopped bouncing enough for anything to happen. Then she crashed. Her blood sugar dipped so low that Luke carried her back to her dorm room before the dance ended. I don't remember it being that funny. Emma stuck out her lower lip. Oh, maybe not for you, but for the rest of us. It was quite hilarious watching you bounce everywhere. It was so different from your shy, quiet way. I actually tested your drink, just to make sure no one had spiked it. You did? That's sweet, Emma said. Luke had always watched out after her, and the thought left her warm and wishing for that protection once again. Ever since we met, I've had a crazy need to protect you. He looked over her shoulder and stiffened. I still do. Emma turned to see Zeke swaggering towards them. Lila and Kyle met him before he made it to their table. She didn't feel threatened by the ski bum. He was a harmless flirt, probably used to flings with ski bunnies. She didn't have any interest, but Luke's protectiveness amused her and made her feel hopeful. You have always had jealousy issues, Emma teased, bumping her shoulder into him and then staying there. It felt too good to move away. Do you want his attention? Luke's voice held a tight, controlled rage. As much as Emma felt hopeful about his show of protectiveness, she didn't want him actually stressing about the guy. She rested a hand on his chest as she reached for his face with the other. Her touch on his cheek brought his eyes to meet hers, and a fire sparked within them. No, I only want yours. Her voice sounded breathless. The words were the truth. He had been all she could think of for some time. She had to make him see she would not run again. Luke wrapped a hand around her waist and pulled her into him. He inclined his face into her palm and closed his eyes. "I've missed your touch." His eyes shot open, and Emma knew he hadn't meant to say the words aloud. "Me too." Bolstered by his reaction, her breathing heavy, she raised on her toes until she could feel his breath rapid on her face. Before she could feel free to kiss him though, she had to know. "Luke, could you ever see yourself forgiving me?" "I want to," he said, his voice deep and emotion-filled. "I want to so much." Luke reached up and slid a gentle finger down her cheek. She leaned into it, wishing that finger would tilt her face to meet his lips, just like he used to. "Hey guys, the dance floor is out there." Kyle broke into the perfect moment, with a chuckle. "Shush." Lila punched him. "Can't you see they were about to kiss? We've been waiting on this for a year." "A year?" Zeke asked. "I thought they were engaged." His eyebrow arched as he watched Emma with a look that made her feel like a piece of meat. "We are," Emma defended. "At least we were," she whispered, only loud enough for Luke to hear. Zeke pointedly looked at her bare hand. "Whatever you say, gorgeous. I don't see a ring, so I'm still asking for a dance." "She's taken." "Go find your own girl," Luke said through gritted teeth, taking a step forward. "Chill, man." The ski bum put his hands up. "You can't blame me for trying." He whistled. "She's the hottest girl here." "That she is, and she's mine." Luke's broad shoulders squared as he tightened his hold on Emma, who didn't mind him stepping in. It was like college all over again, and the thought made her smile. "What am I? Chopped liver?" Lila said, though she giggled. It was her father's favorite saying. "Come on, sis, I've got to use the ladies' room." Lila grabbed Emma's arm and took her away. "You guys behave yourselves while we're gone," she threw over her shoulder. Emma's heart filled. She loved it when Lila called her sis. It had always meant so much to her. She hugged the younger girl close to her. "Thanks, sis." "You and my brother almost kissed," she shrieked as they walked into the restroom. "Yeah, it sure felt like that." Emma paused at the mirror, leaned forward, and let out a huge breath. Her blue eyes looked back at her with hope. Was this really going to work? "You know, I should be livid with you." Lila looked at her with fists on her hips. She had grown in so many ways this last year, but her assertive, outgoing personality still shone through. "Nice word, and you have every right to be." Emma hung her head, her elation coming down. Her actions had caused so much pain for the people she loved. "The thing is, as soon as I saw you, I knew you were back for Lukey. All that anger melted away, and I just felt relief. He's been no fun since you left." Her lower lip protruded before she slid some more lip gloss on and another coat of mascara. "It was a horrible thing to do," Emma sighed. She marveled at how well Luke's little sister applied makeup, like she'd been doing it for years. She still remembered when they would have makeup parties, and she would dress Lila up like she was going to a fancy ball. "Yeah, but you won't do it again, right?" Lila pierced her with a sharp look. "Never," she said, returning the intensity the young girl had. Her chest tightened in fear. She wouldn't run again, would she? If she had any doubts, then she should leave right now. She didn't want to hurt Luke any more than she already had. When they left the bathroom, Emma saw Luke walking away from the DJ booth towards the bar. When they met up with him, he handed her his water. "Thirsty?" he asked. "Yes, thank you." Emma drank after him without a second thought. They had done it for years before. "Where's Kyle?" Lila asked, looking for her love interest. Luke nodded his head toward the guy walking toward them. His friend, on the other hand, has found a more optimistic prospect. Emma saw the ski bum talking up a couple of young girls in miniskirts. She smiled. That was just the kind of guy she had pinned him for the first time she saw him. A part of her appreciated Zeke. His attention on her had accomplished more than she had hoped to get in this one night. "Now you can relax," Emma told him and hesitantly reached for his hand. His hand swallowed hers eagerly, and a smile eased onto his lips. Warmth spread throughout her as hope spoke with every pulse of their linked hands. Lila had lost herself in Kyle again, so the two of them were left alone, well, as alone as you could be at a resort dance. They stood together, only slightly awkward as the current song ended. The first few strums of the next song sent Emma's heart racing. She met Luke's gaze with wide eyes. His soft brown eyes crinkled in knowing. He must have requested this song. The DJ would have never played such an old tune, a melody that sent tingles down her spine and warmth in her stomach. Their song. The song they claimed as theirs for the 5 years they were together. The song they had planned to dance to at their wedding. "May I have the pleasure?" Luke asked, pulling her towards the dance floor. She followed him, still in a daze. Her arms wrapped around his neck as his hands wrapped around her waist. He pulled her close to him, and she rested her head on his chest. The beat of his heart raced underneath her, and she felt her pulse match it. They danced as if the entire world lived in their arms, and for the moment it did. As the final chorus played, Emma stepped back to look into his eyes. His soft brown gaze filled her with so much longing, so much love she could hardly breathe. How could she have left this? His eyes seemed to be asking the same question. "Luke, Emma started and looked down, unable to meet the intensity of his gaze any longer. Luke's hand traveled from her waist, up her back, around her neck and to her face. With a gentle finger, he tipped her face up. Her lips parted as she met his eyes. She froze, her breathing stopped, her heart stopped, and the whole world faded to a dim buzz as Luke dipped his head to hers. His lips brushed against hers, timid, fearful, as if he thought she might disappear at any moment. Yet, the tingles the familiar touch sent racing through her left her wanting more. It awakened her body, making her realize just how asleep she had been. Her fingers threaded through his short hair, and cautiously pulled him closer. He answered by deepening his kiss, and cupping the back of her head. Familiar emotions raced through Emma, as she hoped they did through Luke. As with every other kiss they had shared, it made her feel like they had been made for each other. No one could ever compare to him. No one ever loved her as he did. She knew he had been made just for her and she for him. "Please," she begged, "please let us conquer this and have our bond stronger for it." When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers, and his breath came in a rush as if he had held it for a year. Emma watched his closed eyes reverently, hopeful and fearful of what she might find once he opened them. Would he regret the kiss? Had it been a goodbye kiss, or a kiss of forgiveness? She sucked in a breath as Luke's eyes fluttered open. In his gaze only love lived, the love he had always shown her, always gave so freely. "I love you, Luke." She grasped him tightly, and laid her head on his chest. He kissed her head and whispered through her hair. "I love you too, Em." Emma's heart exploded in joy. Her prayers had been answered. Luke still loved her. Her heart did a little happy dance, as her arms squeezed him tighter. With this knowledge, she would not give up on them, never again. The rest of the night was magical. It seemed as if only she and Luke existed. Through fast song or slow, Luke held her on the dance floor, swaying together. She soaked in their love like a sponge. Her body felt starved of his touch, and she never wanted to leave his side again. At times tears would flow freely down her cheeks, and she let them go unbidden. They were tears of regret from having denied them this for the last year, tears of gratitude that he had found enough love to forgive her, and tears of joy for being in his arms once again. The lights brightening brought them sleepily from their love coma, and the realization that they were the last two on the dance floor. Luke blinked a few times, wrapped his arm around Emma's waist, and walked them off the floor. He searched the departing crowds, as did Emma. "There," Emma said as she pointed toward a dark corner of the room. Lila and Kyle sat on bar stools tucked into the darkest recess, and their position caused Luke to stiffen. His step hesitated for a moment, before he dropped his arm from around Emma and strode towards his sister. Kyle had leaned in and his lips had just touched Lila's when Luke yanked him backward. "Hey," the kid yelled once on his feet. "Time to go home, lil' sis." Luke ignored Kyle, who bristled behind him. "Luke?" Lila's eyes widened and then filled with tears. How could you? She ran from the room. Luke's shoulders slumped a little before he turned and glared at Kyle. The kid took a step back. Emma didn't blame him. Luke's normally easygoing ways helped people feel at ease around him, but his size could intimidate just about anyone. It was only a kiss, man. The kid shoved his hands in his pockets and scuffed his boot on the wooden floor. You only met her 2 days ago. Have some respect, if not for yourself, then for her. Luke swiveled on his heel and headed towards the door. Emma woke herself from the shock of the scene and followed behind him. She could understand Luke's protective intrusion. It was startling to see little Lila kissing a boy. Yet she remembered her first kiss as well, and could only imagine how embarrassed the younger girl was at the moment. Rounding the corner, Emma saw Lila standing next to the elevators, arms hugging herself and her hair hanging down in a curtain covering her face. Luke set his lips in that determined expression and quickened his pace towards his sister. Lila. Luke started, but Emma put her hand on his arm. Emma shook her head and stopped Luke from advancing. Why don't you cool off? I'll take care of this, she suggested sweetly. It's kind of a girl thing. But they were? Luke started before Emma leaned up and gave him a quick kiss. Please, she asked, practically batting her eyelashes. She knew a big brother lecture was not what Lila needed right now. This situation needed a woman's touch. One wrong move, and this could send her into a rebellious spree or a shameful depression. I'll be at the bar with a hot chocolate waiting. He searched her eyes before looking at Lila and back at her. We have a lot to discuss. Yes, we do, she replied, unable to keep her heart from hammering at the thought. Thank you for allowing me to do this. He kissed her head and with one last look at Lila, turned and walked back to the bar. Emma hurt for him. She knew he had done only what he thought he had to do for his little sister's honor. He knew he was only trying to protect her, even if from herself. Once he was out of sight, Emma put her arm around Lila, who turned into her embrace. How could he embarrass me like that? Lila sobbed. Kyle won't want anything to do with me now. If he doesn't, then he's not man enough for you, Emma soothed. But he is so cute, and no guy has ever paid that much attention to me. Lila wiped at her eyes and stepped back. The elevator door opened, and they both stepped in. I understand that feeling. Emma nodded as the doors closed, and she pushed button 4, the floor the Adams condo was on. You do? Of course. I was 16 once too, you know. She bumped her shoulder into the younger girl. His name was Connor, and he was the hottest guy at my high school. Really? How did it happen? Lila asked, wiping the tears from her eyes. Well, it was at a dance. It always is, Lila said with a wistful sigh. When the doors opened, she pulled Emma out and sat her down on the bench there. What happened? He gave me all his attention at the dance. We danced together for every song, fast and slow. He ignored his friends, and I completely forgot about mine. During the last song, well, that was my first kiss. Did someone pull him off you too? Lila stuck her lower lip out. Well, no, but that might have been better. Emma remembered the night so clearly. She had been surprised when his lips touched hers, but excitement soon took over. The short kiss would forever be ingrained in her mind, not because it was that good, but because of what happened afterward. How could that be better? Lila's forehead furrowed. It might have saved me from convincing myself I was in love with him, and he was in love with me all weekend long. She remembered writing the boy's name over and over, writing her name with his last name, and thinking herself lucky that she had found her one at such a young age. Why would that have been bad? Lila looked confused as her hands twisted in her lap. Emma cleared her throat. Well, because back at school on Monday, he ignored me as if I didn't exist, much less that he had given me my first kiss. Her heart had broken on the spot as he and his friends walked by her, and burst into laughter as her face fell. No. Lila said, standing up. Yeah, Emma said with a shrug. Guys that kiss that easily might not be the way to go. But Kyle isn't like that. Lila crossed her arms. At least I don't think he is. I hope not, Emma told her, hoping that the kid had better intentions than his friend. It was probably inevitable that Lila's heart would be hurt at some point, but she didn't want to see it happen tonight. How long did it take Luke to kiss you the first time, I mean? Lila sat again and leaned forward. 1 month. A small smile curled on Emma's lip. She had waited so long for that first kiss. A month? Wow, he's a prude. Lila's mouth hung open in shock. Emma shrugged. It was hard to wait, but worth every agonizing night. She laughed, thinking of those nights when she second-guessed her feelings for him and his for hers. All she wanted was that kiss. It makes more sense now why my brother overreacted like that. Lila's shoulders slumped. Do you think Kyle will talk to me again? If he doesn't, then he isn't worth your time or your first kiss. Emma stood and pulled Lila into a hug. Try not to overanalyze it until you see him. That's going to be so embarrassing. She hid her face in Emma's shoulder. I bet you that Kyle will be the one feeling sheepish, Emma encouraged, hoping she would be right. Really? Lila stepped back and rocked up on her tiptoes. Yes, now come on. Emma hooked the younger girl's arm. Let's get you back to your room. Emma took a deep breath as she came into the resort bar. Luke sat on a stool, chatting with the bartender who wore a Santa hat, sipping on a mug of hot chocolate. She liked the fact that he didn't drink, just like her. Watching him interact, seeing his hands move and his face contort expressively with the stories he told, sent her heart racing all over again. She bit her lower lip. Would he still want to try again? Will he ever be able to trust her? Luke glanced at the door, and when his eyes met hers, they lit up. He waved her over. Emma noticed his gaze admiring her sweater dress, and was glad she had let Sarah convince her to get it. Pete, this is Emma. He said her name, as if the bartender knew all about her. She would like a hot chocolate as well. Pleasure to meet you, Emma, the bartender nodded as he filled her a steaming mug. Nice to meet you too, she replied. Pete lives here year-round. They have all sorts of summer activities as well. He watched her as if trying to read her every thought. That sounds nice, Emma nodded towards the bartender. My wife and I enjoy it. She works in the restaurant. He set the mug in front of Emma. Oops, got some more customers. Catch you two later. He winked and moved on down the bar. Let's sit at a table. Luke took her hand and led her to a small table in the quieter part of the bar. Emma's hand tingled from his touch, and her hope soared. Holding hands with Luke brought back so many comforting memories. When he pulled his chair right up to hers, her heart raced even more. They sat in silence for the next few minutes. Emma enjoyed the sensation of being this close to Luke. The feeling of rightness, of belonging, was what had been missing from every other date she had ever had. With Luke, she felt so comfortable. Christmas lights strung around the bar flickered colored light along the walls, and Christmas music played in the background. This time of year always filled her with such nostalgia, longing, and happiness. This year it expanded tenfold with Luke by her side again. Him forgiving her would be the greatest gift she could ever ask for. Luke fiddled with his empty mug. He looked over at her, and then back out to the dwindling crowd. Emma wanted to talk. She wanted to hear his voice, his laughter, but fear clutched her throat as if she would say the wrong word and wake up from this dream. Do you think I overreacted about my sister? Luke didn't meet her eyes, but kept watching the couples fade into the hallway. I understand why you acted the way you did. Emma did understand. Her hand squeezed his in an offer of support. Think Lila will ever forgive me? Regret dripped from his voice. Emma knew the feeling, and knew how it sucked everything from you. She understands now, I think. She thought of the young girl, who looked up to her big brother with adoration. Lila would forgive him. I hope so. Thanks for talking with her. He glanced at her for a moment, before twirling his mug around again. Of course. She's like a sister to me. Guilt sparked within her, once again reminding her of what she had thrown away when she left last year. Her actions didn't just affect her and Luke's life, but their families too. She shook her head, needing a distraction from her self-inflicted misery. You sure surprised that kid though. Emma let a small smile play on her lips. Yeah, it shocked me too. I'm not really prone to violence. His eyes still would not meet hers. No, and you don't need to be. You're intimidating enough without having to use your hands. You think so? Luke finally met her eyes. I know back in college, all it took was you stepping closer to me and the guys backed off. Emma shrugged. She secretly liked the fact that her boyfriend intimidated the other guys. It made her feel safe. It sure didn't seem to work tonight, he muttered, and she knew he meant Zeke. Well, some people are just obtuse. Luke laughed and eased back into his chair. I guess you're right. Silence enveloped them again as another Christmas song came on. This one made her crave sitting in front of a fireplace, cuddled on the couch. They used to hang out in the lobby into the early morning hours during these Christmas vacations. They wanted to get every minute with each other, until they couldn't keep their eyes open. Those memories warmed her, and yet her body shivered. She wanted those times back. You cold? Luke asked. He rubbed his hand up and down her arm. They're closing up here anyway. He met her eyes. Would you want to go out to the lobby? Emma's eyes widened. Had he read her mind? Is that a no? He pulled his arm off of her. No, I was only surprised because I had just been thinking about our nights in the lobby. Oh, he said with a small smile. Luke rose and offered a hand to Emma. Then let's go. They walked hand in hand to the lobby. The night clerk glanced up at them before returning to texting or gaming on his phone. Soft Christmas music played here just as it always had. The couches in front of the gas fireplace still looked as comfy as they had 5 years ago. And the big bay windows opened to the ski slopes. Wow, Emma said as she saw the full moonlight reflect off the white snow-covered peaks. That is quite the sight. Luke walked with her to the big window. Emma felt like she could reach out and touch the glowing peaks. The cold seeped through the glass, but the warmth of the room increased that nostalgic feeling that only a snowy night could bring. Nothing like being cozy when it was freezing outside. Her breath fogged the window, and without thinking she wrote "I love you" on it with her finger just like she used to. When she met Luke's soft brown gaze, the intensity that lived in them startled her. His hands fumbled around in his pocket until he hid something in his hand. I wanted to give you your gift tonight when we were alone, Luke said, his voice thick. Gift? Emma questioned. There were a few shops at the resort, but she surely didn't expect him to get her anything. It's something I've been carrying around for a year, and? Luke licked his lips, held her eyes with that penetrating gaze, and took a deep breath. I would like it back where it belongs. Luke opened his hand to reveal her old engagement ring. He searched her eyes tentatively, and then slipped it back onto her finger. Emma's mouth dropped open, her eyes stung with tears, and her throat clenched. She had cried when she took this ring off the last time. Its absence had left her feeling empty. She had wrapped the ring in a note simply stating, I'm sorry, in his condo almost a year ago. Had he really carried it with him all this time? She lifted her eyes from the ring to him. That is if you want it? Luke asked, and she instantly was thrown back into the memory of his first proposal. Yes, I never thought. Emma did her best to swallow as the tears rolled down her cheeks. Thank you, Luke, for giving me another chance. I promise I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Just promise to stay with me for the rest of my life, and the past will be forgotten. Luke threaded his hand in her long dark curled hair. You look so beautiful tonight. I did it for you, she said, closing the distance between them. When their lips connected, Emma felt the stone of guilt within her melt away. Not that she still wouldn't deal with it, but its heaviness lessened with the knowing that she had the chance to make it up to him. A rush of energy filled her as he deepened their kiss in the all-encompassing way he used to. It made her feel as if he claimed her with the action, as if she was the last woman he would ever kiss. She wanted the kiss to continue forever. She wanted it to drown out the last year of pain for him and uncertainty for her. When they broke away, he rested his forehead on hers just like he used to. This feeling of connection after a kiss always filled her soul with love and security. Luke took in a deep breath, pulled back and held both her hands. "I want to do it tomorrow." Emma still reeled from their kiss. She blinked her eyes and tried to focus on what Luke had just said with such intensity and determination. "What?" "I want to get married tomorrow." Luke's chest heaved as he waited for her reply. "It's Christmas." Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. Tomorrow? Just like that? What if she had changed over the last year, and he didn't like who she had become? Where would they have it? Who would perform the ceremony? Questions rocked Emma. Yes, it is," he said, and smiled in his charming way, the way she could never refuse. She realized all those logistics didn't matter. Luke wanted to marry her. He was giving her a second chance, and she would drop everything to take it. Tomorrow it is. Her heart thundered as she stood on her tippy toes and brought him back into a kiss that showed him just how excited she was. Christmas morning woke Emma with bright rays bathing her room in light. She immediately hid her face under the blankets. As sleep faded away, though, realization and memories took hold. Today was Christmas, memories washed through her. Today she was getting married. Emma sat straight up in bed. Her mind whirled in so many directions, from making plans to feeling ecstatic, to fear gripping her heart, to wondering if she still dreamed. Today she would become Mrs. Luke Adams. How had things moved so fast? How had Luke gone from hating her to wanting to get married, and today? She dropped her head in her hands, hoping to still it. It didn't seem to help, so she left her bed, wrapped her robe around her, and found her parents. They were sitting at the table, eating their breakfast as if it were any normal day. "Merry Christmas, sleepyhead," her dad greeted. "Merry Christmas, sweetie," her mom added. Emma looked from one to the other, her hands fiddled with her robe tie, and her heart pounded in her ears. She swallowed, trying to wet her throat enough to speak. "I'm getting married today." Her words sent the room into a tense silence. Her parents' eyes went wide. Their English muffins fell to their plates, and it took a few seconds for their mouths to close. "That wasn't what I expected you to say this morning," her dad finally stated, breaking the stunned silence. "It's quite a surprise to me, too," Emma whispered and plopped into a chair at the table. "It's what you want though, right, sweetie?" Her mom reached over and took her hand. "I had hoped for a reconnection with Luke, yes. I'm still in a bit of shock about it all happening today. My mind won't stay still long enough for me to really think. He probably wants to make sure you don't run again," her dad muttered. "David." Her mom sent her husband a sharp look. Her dad shrugged. "I think it's a good sign. You want to marry Luke, right?" "Yes," Emma replied, even as her heart hammered. "Then does it matter what day it happens?" Her father's eyes, so much like her own, peered into her. She wished she had the wisdom that he had. Then she would have had the wedding she had spent months arranging, rather than what they could put together in less than 24 hours. "What about my dress?" The lament escaped her before she chastised herself. What did a dress really matter in the end? Luke was taking her back. That should be good enough. Her mom left the table and disappeared into her room. Emma dropped her head on her hands, letting the cool table soothe her. Everything moved so quickly. Her head spun with everything to do, and all the things that had happened. Last night Luke had laid out his plans, showing just how much thought he had put into his spontaneous idea. He said they could wait until dark when all the Christmas lights shined, and marry in the lobby in front of the big bay window where he had slipped her ring back in its place. The bartender he had talked with earlier had his minister license and would be happy to officiate it. He said he would even talk to the manager about using the sound system to play the wedding march. She had gotten so wrapped up in his excitement, she didn't think of detailed things, like her dress, flowers, and all those other little yet important things that women usually have months to perfect. "You know," her mother said as she came back into the room carrying something that rustled. Emma, though, didn't have the energy to even peek at what it might be. "You could always have a bigger wedding later on in the year and invite all your friends, have the reception, flowers, dancing, and all of that." The thought soothed the chaos wrapping around in her mind. "That's a great idea, Mom." She raised her head from the table. "We could have a big reception in February or March, after I'm back in town." Her mind slowed as the chaos eased off, allowing excitement to float to the surface. She looked towards her mom, who still struggled with the rustling bag. "What is that?" Her heart stopped and her mouth dropped. Her mom held up the dress Emma had planned to walk down the aisle in last year. She had spent months looking for it. As soon as she saw the silky ball-like gown, she knew that the dress was the one. "How did you?" "Maybe women's intuition?" Her mom shrugged, a pleased smile shining on her face. "I'm never going to hear the end of this," her dad griped, but his eyes sparkled. "That's right," her mom said. "You'll have to at least consider I might be right when I come up with crazy premonitions." "I can't believe you, Mom." Emma touched the silky, billowy fabric in reverence. "This wedding must be meant to be." "I think so, sweetie." Her mom's eyes brimmed, sparkling with unshed tears. "I can't wait to tell Luke that I will have my dress." She brought the dress to her chest and twirled around. "It would be a grand surprise if you just walked out in it." Her mom shrugged. She had always been great at planning events and surprises. "You're right. Don't say anything, Dad." Emma gave him a sharp look. "Oh, you mean I can't gossip about your dress with Luke? What am I ever going to do?" her dad teased. She smiled as the excitement began to override the fear. This was going to happen. She was going to marry Luke Adams in a matter of a few hours. In tradition, Emma's family and the Adams gathered together for brunch in Emma's parents' condo. Emma reached out and rubbed the artificial pine needles of the Christmas tree her dad always brought with them. Somehow, she still thought it looked real. Her mom turned on classic Christmas carols, and they played in the surround sound of the living room. The ambiance was perfect, just as it was every year. A contented sigh escaped her lips as she stored the presents she had in her hand under the tree. Luke's hand slipped around her as she stood. "You doing okay, Em?" "More than okay." She tilted up on her toes and kissed his lips. The quick contact caused a warmth to spread throughout her. It felt more than good to kiss him whenever she wanted again. "I arranged everything. Hope 7 sounds good?" His finger traced her cheek, brushing a loose strand of raven hair behind her ear. "Perfect," she breathed out. She realized she didn't care about the details. She just wanted to marry the love of her life. "You ready to tell everyone?" He brought her hand up to kiss it, and the ring on her finger sparkled. Well, I kind of already told my parents." She bit her lower lip. "Oh well, my parents still need to know, and Lila, of course." His eyes strayed to her lips and then back to her eyes. "Of course," she said, squeezing his hand. Luke kissed her forehead, and then called out to their families. "So, could we get your attention? Emma and I have an announcement." He looked at Emma with such love that she thought for sure she could die a happy woman right then and there. How had she been so lucky to have found such a loving, forgiving man? Lila gasped. "Emmy is wearing her ring again." "You guys are back together?" Mrs. Adams asked, scooting to the edge of her seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, we're getting married." Luke started. "Do I still get to be the maid of honor?" Lila jumped up out of her chair. "Absolutely," Emma said. She beamed at the younger girl. Emma had other friends who would have been her bridesmaids, but in all of her childhood dreams, she had the sister she never had become her maid of honor. So last year she had asked Lila to fulfill that dream for her. "Are you guys going to have it at the church you planned last year, or?" Mrs. Adams began. The old Victorian church had been so beautiful. A small touch of regret settled in Emma before she shook it loose. All those things didn't matter. Spending the rest of her life with Luke did. "Ah no," Luke interrupted. "Emma and I are getting married." He looked into her eyes one more time before turning back to his family. "Tonight." The room erupted in excited conversation. Everyone talked at the same time. Luke pulled Emma into him and kissed her head. "I know this isn't the way you expected your wedding to be. I'm sorry. I just couldn't wait any longer," he whispered into her hair. "I understand." She looked up into his soft brown eyes. "How would you feel about a big reception once I get back in February?" Emma asked, holding her breath. "It's going to be so difficult to be away from you for that month," he growled as he brought her tighter against him. "It's going to be torture," Emma whispered, wishing she could just walk away from California right now. Her sense of responsibility wouldn't let her, and she had grown quite attached to her students. "Of course, if you want, then we will definitely have a reception in February, and we'll go on a long honeymoon after that. You spending the rest of your life with me is all that matters." Luke leaned down and kissed her slowly, possessively, and fully. "Hey, you haven't said your I do's just yet, young man," Emma's dad teased. The couple broke apart, red burning both of their cheeks. It was easy to forget everyone was there when she was in his arms. "What time is this wonderful event happening?" Mrs. Adams asked. 7 tonight in the lobby." Luke squeezed an arm around Emma, and for a second she thought he held her as if he feared she would disappear. The families passed around gifts, shared stories, and enjoyed Christmas morning. Emma lost herself in Luke, not paying much attention to anything else. She couldn't believe that tonight, this unbelievably merciful man would be her husband. "Oh, I can't wait." Mrs. Adams clapped her hands as she watched Emma and Luke. "Soon these holidays will be filled with the pitter-patter of little feet and excited shrieks." "Easy, Mom." Luke laughed easily, leaning back in the seat and bringing Emma with him. "We have several years before that." The conversation continued, but Emma wasn't aware. Everything faded as her heart constricted. That deep-seated fear crept into her once more. Her breath came in rapid gasps and her body tightened. "You okay, Em?" Luke's voice carried to her through a fog thick with memory. "Yes, I'm fine." She pushed a smile across her lips and then hid her head in his chest. She was anything but fine. She wanted to run. With a deep breath, she freed herself from his arms with an excuse of needing to use the restroom. She shut the bathroom door and leaned against it, pulling in deep, ragged breaths. Memories flooded her, memories she should have remembered, especially as emotionally charged as they were. They had talked about kids before. He knew she wanted them. He knew she wanted several. Yet every time they discussed it, Luke had been adamant about waiting for at least 5 years before starting their family. 5 years. By then, she would almost be 30. Emma couldn't fathom starting a family at 30. She had wanted to be done by then. 30 felt so old. Plus, it worried her that if they waited so long, they would run out of time. What if they had trouble getting pregnant like her parents? It might take them several years of trying before having one, and more before having another. She didn't want her child to grow up without a sibling. As much as she loved her parents and appreciated all that they gave her, she always felt like someone was missing. She felt the absence of a sister or brother. She wanted to ensure her child didn't have to go through that. She had tried to explain her fears to Luke, but he had always brushed them aside, saying all would work out the way it was supposed to. Conflict always made her uncomfortable. Her parents never fought in front of her, and she had never really been around arguments. When she was, it caused her to freeze in fright. So she had let it go, thinking that she could convince him once they were married. Last year, the night she left Luke, though, that night at dinner, Luke had mapped out their future as if he had planned it all without room for change. Fear had consumed her, ate away at her the rest of the night, until she had convinced herself that she couldn't ever change his mind, and she couldn't live within those parameters. She fled. A knock sounded right behind her head. In a gasp, she came back to the present, yet the fear still grew dark inside her. "You okay in there, Em?" Luke's voice traveled through the door. "Yep, I'll be out in a sec." She took a deep breath and stood away from the door. Running the cold water, she dipped her hands and then patted them on her cheeks. She wasn't going to run again. She could do this. After drying her face and hands, she stood straight, plastered on a smile, and walked out to the man she would soon call husband. Outwardly, Emma was a showcase bride-to-be. She did her best to quiet her warring mind, yet it took its toll. By the time the Adams left to prepare for their part of the wedding, Emma could hardly stand any longer. She collapsed on her bed. The emotions pummeled her, leaving her pillow wet with tears and her chest heaving. What felt like hours later, Emma sat up and dried the tears that had released so much. Could she wait 5 years? A deep fear thrummed in her. She stared at her suitcase from across the room. Running definitely crossed her mind. In fact, it consumed her thoughts. Anything to avoid the confrontation, especially right before she committed her life to Luke. Her head shook as she dug her nails into the bed. She'd been there, done that. It had ended in heartache. No, it hadn't ended in heartache. It ended with Luke taking a chance on her again. It ended with their wedding. Emma set her shoulders, strode over to her suitcase and began packing it. A knock on the door startled Emma from her deep thoughts. Her mom poked her head in. "How's my little bride doing?" she asked before her eyes jumped from the suitcase to the wedding dress still hanging in the closet and finally rested on Emma. "You running again?" Emma sighed as she placed her last shirt in the suitcase and then sat beside it. "I would be lying if I told you I hadn't thought about it." A tear she didn't know she had left trailed down her cheek. Her mom sat beside her, keeping her breathing steady, even though her jaw clenched, a sure sign she was biting her words. She wrapped an arm around Emma and just held her. "That fear is back, and I remember the part that terrified me the most," Emma said after several moments of silence. "And," her mom encouraged, "he wants to wait 5 years to start a family." Emma pulled away from her mom. "He wants to start when I'm almost 30. Saying it out loud restarted that fire of fear within her. "Why do you have such a strong objection to that? Your dad and I had you in our 30s. And I'm all you had." Emma wiped at her eyes and stood to pace the room. "I want more than one child, Mom. What if I have trouble having kids like you?" She stopped to meet her mom's eyes, pleading for her to understand. "Oh, honey," her mom said as she rose and brought Emma back into her embrace. Then she held Emma's face so she could look into her eyes. "I'm sorry we could never give you a sibling." "I know, Mom," Emma choked out through her constricted throat. "Come here." Emma's mom patted the bed next to her as she sat. "It wasn't me that had trouble, sweetie. Your dad had an accident when he was a teenager. It hampered his ability to have children." "Why didn't I know about this?" she asked as she plopped down next to her mom, hope starting to peek through the fear. "He doesn't like people to know about it." She shrugged. "When he told me after he proposed, I freaked. I had wanted children from the time I was a child myself. When it came down to it, though, I couldn't imagine my life without your dad. He meant everything to me. I decided that I wanted to marry him, spend the rest of my life with him, even if it meant I could never have children." "Wow," Emma said as she ran a hand down her hair. "That was a big sacrifice." "Yes, which is why we were over the moon when you came along. You are a true gift from God." "Thanks, Mom. I don't think I deserve that title right now, though." Emma sniffed. "We all make sacrifices to be with the one we love, Emma. You just have to decide whether or not this is one you can make." She rose and looked down at her daughter with loving eyes. "And my sweet girl, if Luke is the man God chose for you, then all will work out exactly how it should. Plans are made in shifting sands and they change. It's the end goal you have to keep firm. As long as you two take it on together, you'll be just fine." "Thanks, Mom." Emma nodded her head, though still not sure what she would do. "This is something you and Luke should figure out together." Being 100% open with your partner is what will build that strong foundation to get you through those tough years. She walked towards the door and put her hand on the handle. You have a lot to think about, honey. I'll let you do that, but remember I am here and so is your dad. All you have to do is ask. Emma rolled her suitcase into the living room of the condo. Her dad's eyes shot to her and her suitcase. He turned off the television and stood, blowing air into his cheeks. Marie? He bellowed, never taking his gaze off of his daughter. Her mom came hustling out of the room, her hair half done and her dress not yet zipped. A hand flew to cover her mouth, but her muffled words still snuck out. Again? Relax, you guys. Emma suppressed the smile that struggled to escape. Luke got us our own room for the rest of our trip. It is our wedding night, you know. A blush crept up her neck, reddening her cheeks. I'm taking this over now, so I don't have to worry about it in the morning, but I'll be back to get ready. Her dad blew out the breath he had been holding. Her mom dropped her hand to reveal a wide grin. You about gave me a heart attack, girl, he mumbled as he sat back on the couch and turned the game back on. I'm proud of you, honey. Her mom pulled her into an embrace. Having this talk now will make tonight that much sweeter. I hope so, Emma whispered, swallowing the lump of fear in her throat. She took her time getting to the room Luke had bought for them. Nervous flutters filled her, as she thought about how things would change in only a few hours. Would he still be the same Luke? All she knew was that after tonight there was no more running. This was it, for better or for worse, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Luke answered the knock on the door after a muffled, "Just a minute." His wet hair still stood every which way, and he wore only a pair of sweats that looked hastily pulled on. Em? His eyes shot to her suitcase and back to her. I brought my things for tonight, she said quickly, so he didn't fear the worst. He sighed and pulled her against his bare chest. Emma's heart and breath felt as if she had just raced a marathon. His wide shoulders, muscular torso, and that warm fresh scent of just washed skin about did her in. When he released her, she knew her face would give her away. Her thoughts pulled her away from the main reason she came now, just a couple of hours before their wedding. She wanted to get lost in him. In fact, she would do just about anything to avoid this conversation altogether. What is it, Em? Luke watched her closely as he led her into the room and to the bed. This is nice, Emma said as she sat on the bed. The bed she would share with Luke tonight. Her heart thundered, and she scanned the room to keep her thoughts off tonight. It wasn't a suite like they were used to staying in, but a simple and elegant one-room quarter. Just perfect for them. It will be ours, alone. Luke sat next to her, eyes still searching hers. What's going on? You know me too well. Exactly how a husband should know his wife. His comment fueled a small smile to curl on her lips. Now almost wife, tell me what's troubling you. Emma bit her lip and fidgeted. Well, today you said something that reminded me of the fear that consumed me last year. Luke's eyes went wide and his hands clutched the bedspread. Em, you promised. I know, and I plan to keep that promise, but I need to start this journey with you on an open slope. I don't expect you to understand, but I need you to listen and recognize this is something important to me. Okay, he said hesitantly. You have always said you wanted to be married for 5 years before we have children. And be a junior partner with my firm, Luke added with a nod. Are you still worried about that? I thought we had figured that out. Yes, I am still worried about it, and no, we never figured that out. You brushed my fears aside as if they were childish notions. Emma's voice became heated as fear crept up. She took a deep breath and met Luke's wide eyes. I never felt like you actually heard me, Luke. Luke stumbled on his words before he rose and paced before her. This is why you left? Emma nodded, her eyes brimming. Would he decide he didn't want to marry her now? Why didn't you tell me this back then? He turned towards her, his eyes holding pain and fear. I tried, but I've never been good at making myself heard. I kept telling myself that it would be okay. That maybe you would change your mind once we were married, or even, she took a deep breath, an accident or divine intervention would happen. She shrugged. All the cards were on the table now. All she could do was sit back and see how he would play the hand. It troubled you enough to leave me? He ran his fingers through his hair. The fear consumed me. It made me crazy. I should have talked with you, or at least someone, but the thought just increased that anxiety. Luke took a few more breaths as he paced. Then he sat down next to her, his legs still bouncing. Why do you have so much fear about waiting to start a family? Emma glanced up at him. He was really listening. My parents had trouble getting pregnant with me. We've talked about that. Luke nodded. I always thought my mother was the one who had the infertility issues, and I feared I had inherited that. She met his eyes. Having children, more than one, is so important to me. I couldn't imagine my life without that. So you chose children over me. Luke's tight voice sounded hurt. I thought that was what I wanted. A tear escaped Emma's eyes and flowed down. This last year I realized that, she looked down at the ring on her finger, I couldn't live without you no matter the sacrifice. Em, I wished you would have talked to me about this a year ago. Me too. This is something we can work on together. This last year has pushed me closer to becoming a junior partner earlier than expected. Why is it so important for you to have that position before we start a family? She asked, pushing herself to voice her thoughts. Don't you know, Em? I need to know I can provide for a family before we start one. It all began to make sense to her now. His planned timeline was to get them to where he felt safe in increasing their family. Her dad had said something along these lines years ago. A man has to know they can provide. It is his biggest stress in life. I understand now. She nodded her head. And my mom told me she wasn't the one with the issues, and I shouldn't have any concerns in that department, genetically at least. So? He took her hands in his. So, I appreciate you listening to me and explaining why you feel so strongly about this. And I choose you. Luke squeezed her hands and looked down at them. Em, what if something like this happens again? What if you let that fear drive you away from me? I won't let that happen, she said with conviction. This conversation was the scariest, well besides 3 days ago, that I have ever had, and I survived it. I can do it again. You promise? Yes, I promise, Emma breathed out and scooted closer to him. Besides, we are about to commit for the rest of our lives to each other, there is no running from that. We will figure everything out together as husband and wife, Luke whispered the words so close to her lips. Yes, together, she said as she took his lips in hers. Emma stood in front of the full-length mirror. The billowy dress still hugged her in all the right places. Guess she hadn't put on much weight this last year, even with all those late nights with Death by Chocolate for company. She twirled around and joy filled her as the dress flowed out around her. This dress made her feel like a princess, and Luke was her Prince Charming. She had put so much thought into her mom's words. Her parents, even after 30-plus years of marriage, still looked at one another with such deep love. They had been through trying times. They had made sacrifices, but that love still lived. Emma wanted that with Luke. She wanted to feel that deep connection, that unconditional love, what she felt right now whenever she met his eyes. He had given her a second chance when she didn't deserve one. The least she could do was commit to working on the timing of bringing their children into this world. A warmth filled her as she thought about their conversation. They hadn't set a particular date to try for a family, and she may have to wait the full 5 years. What they had accomplished, though, was clear communication between them. Knowing his fear helped lessen her own. He wanted children, he just needed to know he could support them. Knowing also of the circumstances behind her parents' infertility issues relieved her that much more. She shook her head. They could have cleared all of this up a year ago. With a deep breath, she let that guilt go for now. She couldn't change the past, but she could work on making sure that didn't happen again in the future. Next time she would brave the conversation before her anxiety overwhelmed all common sense. She caught the reflection of her dark hair flowing down to the empire waist of her dress, a stark contrast that she had to admit looked good. She had originally wanted her hair up with tendrils lining her face, but without a fancy hairdresser, she knew it would only frustrate her to attempt the style. Besides, Luke loved her hair down, and he was the only one she needed to impress tonight. Which was why she did her makeup exactly how he liked it, down to her vanilla lip gloss that he loved the taste of. A few dabs of her sweet vanilla perfume, and with one last look in the mirror, she sighed. In only a matter of minutes now, she would be Mrs. Luke Adams. Her heart fluttered in response. She had heard her dad pacing in the other room for the last 15 minutes. He had started his frantic stepping around 6:30. Emma had even heard his deep voice pleading to her mom to go check on their daughter, but her mom kept calm, always responding, "Emma is an adult. She will ask if she needs our help." Just as Emma's dad let out a frustrated growl and pounded on the door, she opened it. Her dad's eyes widened and his breath caught. "You look so beautiful, Emma Bear." His whispered words made her blush. Every daughter wanted to hear that from her dad on her wedding day. "Thank you, Dad." She leaned up on her tippy toes and kissed his cheek. "Look at you, honey. You did a fabulous job." Her mom wiped at a tear that escaped from her brimming eyes. "The day has finally come. I am so proud of you." She embraced Emma, who had to blink rapidly to not ruin her makeup. "Let's not keep your soon-to-be husband fretting any longer," her dad said, giving Emma his elbow. Emma glanced at the clock and realized they only had 5 minutes left until 7. A rock twisted in her belly. She didn't want Luke to worry she might not show. "Yes, we better hurry," Emma said, leading them out the door. When the elevator doors opened, a flushed Lila stood there with a bouquet of roses in her hands. Where on earth had she found the flowers? "Oh, Emmy. You look gorgeous. Luke is going to go bonkers when he sees you." Lila rushed in and hugged her, then stepped back and smoothed the silky fabric of Emma's wedding dress. "Sorry, didn't mean to crumple you. Here are your flowers." "They are beautiful, thank you. I didn't think we could get any of those." "Well, a bride needs a bouquet. Now let's go before my brother has a heart attack or comes looking for you." She pulled Emma into the elevator, and her parents followed. "He swore that if you didn't show up, he would chase you down this time." Knowing he would fight for her made Emma's heart swell. What more could a girl ask for than the man waiting anxiously downstairs? Emma couldn't think of one thing. Emma peeked around the corner, while her mom and Lila got into their positions. Lila gave Luke a thumbs up. Luke's tense body relaxed, and he hung his head as if saying a silent prayer. He looked good. The suit he wore made her think of their first college dance together. So much had happened since then. Lila beamed beside her brother, and her eyes kept straying towards the left side. Emma followed her gaze, and her smile widened as she saw the dimples peek out on Kyle's face. "If you're done spying, Emma Bear, I think they are ready for us," her dad said as he held open his arms. Emma eased into his embrace. This pivotal moment was not lost on her. Old Spice aftershave filled her senses with happy childhood memories. Today, her dad would give her away. In all traditions, this was the day the father would relinquish the responsibilities of the daughter to her husband. "I'm so proud of you," he said and kissed her forehead. His eyes brimmed, but he cleared his throat and took her arm. "Shall we?" "I love you, Daddy." Somehow, at this moment, she felt like the little girl who used to dance on top of her dad's feet. "I love you too, Emma." He squeezed her arm and nodded at the guy who sat at the reception desk. The guy at the desk fiddled with his phone, and over the loudspeakers the wedding march played. Luke really had figured it all out. With a deep breath, they stepped into the lobby where her family, Luke's family, and a few others stood watching her. Once her eyes met Luke's, all else faded. His mouth opened slightly, before turning up into a broad smile. He nodded his head in a sign of appreciation. His eyes never left hers as she closed the distance between them. When they reached Luke and the bartender minister, Pete, her dad kissed her on the cheek and placed her hand in Luke's. "You take care of her, son," he whispered to his soon-to-be son-in-law. "I promise I will, sir," Luke said before turning his attention back to his bride. He leaned in close and whispered in her ear, "I don't know how you pulled off a wedding dress, but you look amazing." Heat rose to Emma's cheeks. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate this joining of man and woman under the eyes of God and of you," Pete began. He looked nothing like the pastor who would have wedded them a year ago, but he fit this scene perfectly. His sunburnt face and raccoon eyes looked like all the other skiers here. While the minister continued with a brief ceremony that focused on commitment and love, Emma lost herself in Luke's eyes. His hands clasped hers. She could feel the rapid pulse in his thumb. Its speed matched her own. Love poured from his eyes, and she hoped he saw the same pouring from hers. The moment was filled with magic, promise, and pure love. "It's now time to say your vows. I understand you have written your own, Luke?" "Yes," Luke said with a confident smile. Emma's breath froze. She had prepared nothing to say. "Emma, from the moment I saw you, I knew you were the one for me. I don't know how, and I never believed in love at first sight before, yet there was no denying it. I was ready to commit my life to you then, and I am still ready today." Emma's eyes brimmed, and a single tear spilled forth. "Emma, I take you as my wife, my best friend, my lifelong partner, and the mother of our children." He squeezed her hand. "I promise to uphold my duties to you as your husband, and as a father, to be faithful, honest, loyal, kind, and always remind you of how important you are to me by listening to you and making you feel heard." The pastor turned to Emma. "Do you have vows prepared, Emma?" She swallowed, trying to clear her constricted throat. Then she met Luke's loving gaze. "No, but I will do my best. Luke, I also fell in love with you the day we first met. I felt an unseen force pulling us together. We belonged together, just as we do now. You are the most caring, compassionate, forgiving man." Emma sucked back a sob, tears streaming down her face. "I do not deserve the unconditional love you so freely give to me, but I promise I will spend the rest of my life doing my best to live up to it." Emma bit her cheeks and held her breath, hoping to contain the emotions that wanted to burst forth from her. "Lila, do you have the rings?" the minister asked. "Yep," she said, her voice shaky and eyes full. She handed Pete the 2 rings she had clenched in her palm. "Luke, Emma, these rings symbolize the never-ending circle of your love and commitment to each other. They serve as a constant reminder that you belong to one another. Luke, place this ring on Emma and repeat after me." Luke slipped the wedding band on her finger. It joined perfectly with her engagement ring. She wondered why he would have had that with him, but the thought quickly faded as he repeated the minister. "Emma, with this ring I dedicate my life to you," Luke repeated, his voice heavy with emotion. "Luke, do you promise to love and cherish Emma as your wife for the rest of your days?" "I do," Luke said, his gaze deepening. "Emma, place this ring on Luke and repeat after me." The minister handed her the ring. She slid it on Luke. "Luke, with this ring I dedicate my life to you," Emma said in a choked whisper. "Emma, do you promise to love and cherish Luke as your husband for the rest of your days?" Emma took in a deep shuddering breath, squeezed Luke's hands, bit her lip and nodded. The minister leaned over with a smile. "I need you to say the words." She took in another breath and exhaled. "I do." So much love filled her that she could barely get her voice past her tight throat. Her hands shook, but happiness filled her to the brim. "Then I now have the privilege of pronouncing you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Luke freed one hand and gently wiped the tears streaming down Emma's cheek. His eyes implored hers. She tilted her face towards him as he slowly lowered towards hers. The moment their lips touched, their eyes closed. Emma swore magic swirled around them, sealing their love and commitment to one another. The small crowd cheered, breaking the kiss before Emma wanted it to end. They turned towards their families. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mr. and Mrs. Luke Adams." The dark house left Emma perplexed. She shifted her 2-year-old son on her hip and rummaged in her purse for her keys. "Sweetie," she asked her 4-year-old daughter Mary, who had her blue eyes and her daddy's calm demeanor. "Could you please find Mommy's keys? I thought I had left the lights on." "Of course, Mommy." Mary stuck her chubby fingers in the purse and pulled out the house keys. "Here they are. What would I do without my little helper?" Emma bent down and kissed her daughter's head. Mary had been such a blessing to her since the day Emma found out, in much surprise, that she was pregnant. Luke had gone through a few stages of shock, but he landed firmly on the ground with gratitude and excitement. It seemed it all happened just the way it was supposed to. For the week they found out they were pregnant, Luke had been offered a junior partner position. When Mary's little brother Joey announced his arrival 2 years later, it seemed the perfect time once again. She shoved a small paper bag back down into her purse. Maybe they would have perfect timing again. Luke should be home shortly. She would wait for him. As soon as she unlocked the door, she shoved her hand in to turn on the lights and lead her little family into their house. As Mary pushed past and threw the door open, a rush of sound and movement caused Emma to gasp, pull Mary closer to her, and tighten her grip on her young son. She took 2 steps back. Surprise! Happy birthday! Cheers erupted within the house from many people in her living room. Joey cried, hiding his face in her chest. "It's okay, baby," Emma said, comforting her boy and trying to calm her own heart. A tentative smile forced its way onto her reddening face. "It's a party," Mary exclaimed, bouncing up and down. Luke smiled sheepishly as he walked towards Emma and his children. "Guess the surprise was a bit too much?" he asked as he took the sniffling boy in his strong arms. "Scary, Daddy," the boy whined and hid his face again. "I'm sorry, Jojo, Daddy didn't mean to scare you." Luke wrapped an arm around his wife. "I'm sorry if I scared your mommy too. I just wanted to do something special for you." "It didn't scare me," Mary said as she ran into her grandma's arms. "We'll recover," and it was a sweet thought. Next time, maybe just have the kids be a part of the surprise rather than victims of it. Emma laughed and hugged Luke to her. "Thank you for wanting to do something special for me. You deserve it, hard-working mama. Now come on, I feel like we have half the town here to celebrate with us." "It looks like it too," Emma whispered, taking in a deep breath before plastering on a smile and greeting all the partygoers. Luke quietly closed the door to their bedroom and walked over to Emma. "They okay?" she asked. "Sleeping like babies," he said, laughing lightly and bringing her into his arms. "I didn't think they would ever leave." She kissed him slow and soft. "Me neither." Mary sure had a blast, though. He stepped back, loosening his tie. "She's growing up too fast." Emma couldn't stop glancing towards the bathroom. "You're telling me," and little Jojo is right behind her. "I can't believe he's almost potty trained. A break from diapers." Luke, you might not get too excited about that." Emma bit her lower lip as she met his eyes. "Why wouldn't I get excited about no more diapers?" "Well," Emma started, cleared her throat, glanced at the bathroom, and then down at her hands twisting in her lap. "You're kidding me." Luke plopped onto the bed next to her, his face ashen. "I don't know for sure yet. I was waiting for you to look at it." Emma's heart thundered. He reached for her hand, pushed a smile into place, and pulled her with him to the bathroom. No sense in waiting any longer. Emma kept her eyes down, not wanting to see it before him. Luke picked it up and his body tensed. She held her breath as she glanced over. 2 pink lines. Luke stared at the stick, eyes wide, mouth open, and face very pale. "Luke? Are you okay?" Emma looked up into his eyes, doing her best to keep the tears from spilling. She should be used to this reaction. It had been the same with the other 2. "You upset?" Luke blinked his eyes a few times as if waking up. Then he put the stick down and put both hands on either side of her face. "Not on your life." He took her lips and kissed her slow and deep. He rested his forehead on hers after the sweet kiss. 3 down. "We can still try for number 4, right?" Emma caught her breath, and her tears burst free as appreciation flooded. She was so happy that Luke had taken her back 6 years ago and became more than her ex-fiancé. I love you, Luke Adams. And I love you, Em, and our growing family. Thank you for listening to More Than My Ex-Fiancé. I hope you enjoyed Emma and Luke's story. I just love stories of forgiveness and hope. Next up is More Than My Brother's Best Friend. If you love small-town Christmas romance, you are going to fall in love with Hannah and Noah.